Marvel, Reincarnation Paradise. Chapter 21. In the spiritual space, there is still a boundless sea of purple fire and a small piece of land suspended above it. But the difference is that compared with the previous size of several feet, the current land is obviously larger. This is the result of Su Yu's 2 points of intelligence improvement. Moreover, there was a round milky white cover above the land. The cover was transparent and emitted a faint light, tightly wrapping Su Yu's spiritual space and isolating it from the burning purple sea of fire. From a distance, it looks like a snowflake crystal ball suspended in a sea of fire. There are also exquisite small houses and octagonal cage decorations inside the ball. This is the spiritual barrier. Sure enough, it came here. After looking around, Su Yu nodded with satisfaction. Yes, it looks more secure this way, and it's a bit of a prototype of a small world. After commenting, Su Yueshi walked towards the edge of the land. From the moment he entered the space, there were constant sounds of roars and fighting below. He wanted to see how fierce the fighting was. Walking to the edge, Su Yu looked down and saw two figures, one large and one small, colliding with each other in the octagonal cage that was also slightly enlarged below. The majestic force caused the air to spread like water waves, and there were traces of water. Wisps of invisible air waves. Good guy, the Hulk version of Professor X. The large figure below is the spiritual body of Professor X, but now he is not as thin as in reality, but like a ferocious beast. The body of more than 2 meters high is covered with strong muscles. The broad chest and back muscles are bulging high, and the majestic upper body is like a towering mountain of meat. Even just watching from a distance, it gives people an overwhelming sense of oppression, and every muscle bundle is clearly interpreting the ultimate physical strength. This is the physical manifestation of the professor's uncontrollable mental power, but this strong body looks particularly weird when paired with the still thin professor's head on his neck. The other smaller figure is naturally X-24. Within the scope of a normal human being, he would naturally be worthy of the title of plump muscles and a strong back, but compared with the current professor, he pales into insignificance. However, despite the huge difference in size between the two, they are still tit for tat in terms of momentum. The two spiritual bodies were enveloped in the octagonal cage, with only the desire to fight and devour each other in their eyes. Under Su Yu's gaze, the two sides launched a charge towards the opposite side and collided brazenly. Under the violent impact, X-24 did not lose much. After the two sides paused in the center of the ring, their shoulders and necks were connected, their arms were touching, and they began to wrestle with each other. Even though his mind was also burnt by the fire, X-24 still instinctively knew how to use force better than the professor, so he was at a stalemate for a while. But after all, the size difference was too big. After a moment of stalemate, the professor straightened his waist and abdomen, and lifted X-24 high into the air. His arms, which were as thick as elephant legs, exploded with large veins, and then he violently moved toward the edge of the octagonal cage. Fling! X-24 hit the pillars of the octagonal cage hard with the whistling wind, making a huge sound, and the entire octagonal cage trembled from the heavy blow. After landing, X-24 was obviously seriously injured, and large swaths of starlight spewed out of his mouth. But as expected of X-24's spiritual body, he was mainly a rough-skinned and thick-bodied man. After spitting out a few mouthfuls of starlight, he struggled to get up, roared forward, and charged at the professor again. Before he could get close, the professor's broad fist fell down like a pillar of heaven, easily knocking off X-24's raised arms. The fist pressed directly against his cheek and crushed him heavily into the ground. Bang! A deafening roar sounded, large pieces of gravel flew, and a deep pit suddenly appeared on the floor of the arena. Su Yu could clearly see that after the professor raised his hand, the head in the pit became a little flat, and the nose had disappeared. His face almost became a blank slate. But even so, X-24 was still not dead, and the faint sound of breathing came from the pit and continued to intensify. Seeing this, the professor was completely furious. He picked up X-24's legs, held them tightly, then twisted around and smashed them. Bang! 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 Continuous banging sounds came from below, like a string of powerful firecrackers being lit. On the octagonal cage, at the edge of the land, Su Yu stared blankly at the brutal scene below. This was no longer a battle, but an outright crushing. Haha, it's really a classic. The famous scene in the movie where the Hulk smashes Loki comes to mind. The scene below is almost a one-to-one replica. But the feeling of watching it in real life is completely different from watching it on the screen. The outpouring of power and brutality is simply breathtaking. After 5 breaths, the professor stopped the continuous smashing. Now the X-24 in his hand had been smashed into several pieces, with only 2 broken legs still remaining in his hand. The octagonal cage was surrounded by intense light spots, which were being rapidly absorbed by the ring. The professor looked at the broken leg in his hand, which was also filled with starlight. He quickly stuffed it whole into his mouth, and after chewing it several times, he let out a cheerful roar, and his figure also grew faintly. Hunter Intelligence +1. Looking at the spiritual body of Professor. After stiffly arching his hands downward, he decisively turned around and left. I can't beat you, so say goodbye. Su Yu is belligerent, but he is not without self-awareness. Judging from his performance just now, the professor may be able to blow him up with one punch. Although it is in his mind space, the gap in mental power between the two sides is too big. This it's not something that home field advantage can make up for. He is not an omnipotent god in the spiritual space. The strength of his body, the level of his will, and the rise and fall of his mental power determine how much power he can exert in the spiritual space. The mental space is also a reflection of the real world. This was the professor's original words when he taught him this skill. If your head hurts a little, just hurt it a little, just think of it as exercising your will. He still has 8 attribute points and a lot of paradise coins in his hand. After converting these into strength, he will kill this Hulk version of Professor X. In a pure white exclusive room. Su Yu, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes and looked slightly embarrassed. The elation brought about by the substantial improvement in his attributes had disappeared. Be patient with one hand, endure with another, just make a strategic retreat. He can't escape in the octagon anyway. After muttering a few words in his mind, Su Yu clicked on his personal information that had changed drastically. Contractor No. 13,215. To protect the hunter, this is a false number, and the hunter cannot be locked by any means. Name, Su Yu, Hunter. Level, LV2, Level 1, every 10 levels is a level. There is no attribute bonus when the level increases. It is the permission of the hunter in the paradise, corresponding to the difficulty of the world, the difficulty of the task, etc. Health, 100%, this attribute cannot be fully digitized and changes according to the degree of injury. Mana, 80, Intelligence times 10, current mana recovery speed, 3 points per hour. Strength, 11, increased by 3 points. Agility, 6. Stamina, 12, increased by 4 points. Intelligence, 8, increased by 3 points. Charisma, 5. Luck, 1. Note, the standard attribute for an adult male is 5 points, and luck is 1 point. Looting talent, chew steel, burn the enemies you kill, light the fire of food, swallow gold, and chew steel. In this trial world, his talent brought him a full 10 attribute points, which even exceeded the reward in the paradise after the mission. Of course, the great harvest this time was largely due to the professor's initiative to seek death. This kind of opportunity comes only by chance, but not by chance. But even if he gains only half of it, his growth rate will far exceed that of his opponents at the same stage. There is never a shortage of powerful enemies in the mission world. As long as he can maintain this snowballing lead, he will definitely become one of the top hunters in the park. Of course, the premise is that he dares to fight, and Su Yu does not lack courage. Although entering the spiritual space this time did not solve the headache problem, it was not without gain. The improvement in intelligence attributes just met the requirements for the use of Beast Intuition. He took out the scroll of Beast Intuition from the storage space, and the paradise prompt sounded. Y/N learns Beast Intuition. Click to use. The next moment, the scroll shattered. Su Yu felt his eyes go dark. When he regained consciousness, he saw a beast that looked like a wolf rushing towards him, pouring straight into his chest, followed by a desolate sound. The wolf howled loudly in his mind. Hunters have acquired Beast Intuition. This skill has reached its upper limit and cannot be enhanced. Interesting. Su Yu had woken up from the illusion just now and looked at the cold hairs on his arms with interest. He took out an arrow from the storage space. The sharp Mitsubishi arrow was slowly approaching the back of his hand. Before it even touched the skin, he could see the hairs on the back of his hand standing up and shaking, and a tiny force seemed to be pricked by the tip of a needle. Pain comes from the skin. A good ability, very practical. After admiring, Su Yu moved the Mitsubishi arrow away from the back of his hand, and the needle-pricking sensation quickly disappeared. This skill was more magical than he imagined, and it was worthy of being called a pirated spider sense. Now he has 3 skills. Although none of them have offensive capabilities, they are all indispensable. Skill 1. Affiliated skill of talent, metallization, special. Skill effect, digesting physical strength can achieve metallization of the body. The current metallization process is, skin membrane, 80%. Tip, this skill is a special type and cannot be strengthened through the samsara paradise. It can only be strengthened by the hunter himself. Skill 2. Self-understanding skill, mind space, special. Skill effect, open the spiritual space. Tip, this skill is a special type and cannot be strengthened through the reincarnation paradise. It can only be understood by the hunter himself. Skill 3. Beast intuition. Skill effect, enhances crisis perception, allowing the body to respond more quickly to incoming damage. Although the first 2 are more concise than the other in the introduction of the information panel, they both have great room for development and can serve as the core foundation of Su Yu's melee system and spiritual system. How far it can develop in the future depends entirely on how Su Yu develops it. Now that the equipment, attributes, and skills are all clear, it's time to see the world. Su Yu turned his attention to the only furniture in the exclusive space, which was still white. Chapter 22. At the door of the exclusive room, Su Yu opened the door lightly. In an instant, the silent room was suddenly filled with the noise coming in from outside the door, and a strange and vast, seemingly all-encompassing bustling city burst into Su Yu's eyes. What came in front of him was a large group of spectacular buildings. The magnificent and characteristic buildings were lined up one after another. With a simple glance, Su Yu saw the cyber building flashing with neon colors and the wizard with the glow of magic. High towers, quaint churches singing solemn hymns, and castles of flesh and blood with twisted tentacles floating. Strange buildings like this are scattered all over the city, but they don't seem strange, but rather coordinated. Magnificent and generous, this is the paradise of reincarnation that connects countless worlds. Looking up the building, the sky above is not a blue sky, but a milky white film, like a large upside-down bowl, covering the entire city tightly. This is very similar to my spiritual space, which is also a milky white barrier. A few strange thoughts ran through his mind, but they were quickly thrown away by Su Yu. Looking down, he saw a wide and clear street in front of him, with bustling people intertwining on the criss-crossing sidewalks. But unlike the street scenes in metropolitan areas on Earth, the streets here are so wide that they are exaggerated. What flows on the roads is not just traffic, but also many strange things. Vehicles with different styles such as suspended flying motorcycles, circular flying saucers with blue light, various majestic and domineering beasts, ordinary-looking small brooms, square magic carpets flashing with strange symbols, etc. Meet each other, shuttle between each other, and occasionally there were also 1 or 2 shouts and curses. You are very arrogant when you are riding a big cat, aren't you? Watch the road and jump on the street. Damn it, you stepped on a broken broom and thought it was Hot Wheels. I'm going to overtake you. Hey, why are you driving your mecha when it has no power? Move the exhibition aside and don't block the road. All of a sudden, the roar of cars and tigers began to spray on the road. Seeing this scene, Su Yu, who was standing at the door, couldn't help but twitch his eyes. It seems that road rage thrives everywhere. After leaving the door, the ground under your feet was made of a light yellow gelatin. It looked like a large piece of topaz, but it felt very firm when you stepped on it. After walking a few steps to the pedestrian street, Su Yu began to wander around. The streets were crowded with people, and pedestrians dressed in strange shapes abounded. Domineering armor, luxurious robes, gloomy hood, wild fur mink. All kinds of clothes that seemed to be in different channels were rubbing and intertwined in the same street, which made Su Yu's extremely ordinary short-sleeved t-shirt look a little out of place. On both sides of the street, there are a wide variety of shops dotting the streets. There are ordinary restaurants and clothing, unusual firearms and weapons, and there are also rare potion scrolls that are usually only found in the game. Su Yu even saw a small shop selling Pokemon at an intersection. The 2 Squirtles trying to attract customers at the door of the shop were quite conspicuous. When walking on the road, what you hear most are the various hawking sounds coming from the shops on both sides. High-quality weapons, extremely discounted, don't miss it if you pass by. Take a look, take a look, all the products in the store have 5 paradise points. 1 zhou, zhijiang, 1 zhou, zhijiang, etc. This thing has already gone to the reincarnation paradise? The familiar dynamic music made Su Yu couldn't help but take a few more glances at this clothing store with a large stereo in front of his home. After walking a long way, he got rid of this brainwashing melody. Following the direction with the densest crowds of people, Su Yu finally came to a huge square. In the center of the square stands a giant pillar that reaches the sky. Around the pillar are densely packed virtual screens, on which vague information about purchasing various equipment and skills can be seen scrolling. Surrounding the giant pillars, countless small stalls are arranged in a spiral shape around the square. Various equipment and colorful lights are constantly exploding all around. The flow of people passing back and forth, impassioned shouting, and noisy bargaining sounds make the entire square a buzzing place. A pot of boiling soup. Different from the various shops on the street, this trading square is obviously much more lively. An endless stream of contractors and employees gather here from all directions and disperse like rivers to the sea. Hey! Is this guy a newcomer? When he was distracted, a brisk female voice came from beside him. Su Yu was stunned for a moment, then turned his head to look, and a head of long pink hair came into view first. Seraphine. Yes, how about it? It looks good. This skin cost me a lot of money. The girl had a brisk tone and a sweet smile. As she spoke, she flipped her iconic long pink hair towards Su Yu. Not bad. After a faint comment, Su Yu continued, how do you know that I am a newcomer? Ha! Your unseen look just now is exactly the same as when I first arrived at the paradise. Besides, this is a gradeless item, isn't it? The girl chuckled and pointed at the t-shirt on Su Yu's body. It's rare to see someone wearing clothes that aren't even white in the park. You can tell he's a newbie who just arrived at the park. After hearing the explanation, Su Yu nodded clearly, and the girl opposite continued to hit the iron while it was hot. You were confused when you first arrived at the paradise. The whole city is much bigger than you imagined. How about we ask the park guide to find out? Looking at the girl's expectant eyes, Su Yu did not refuse. He really needed a guide. What's the fee? Hey, don't worry, it's definitely high quality and cheap. Let's go, I'll take you to a quieter place first. The girl walked ahead with her hands behind her back, waving to Su Yu to follow, and Su Yu followed closely. By the way, I haven't introduced myself yet, just call me Ziu. What do you call me, little brother? Fire, fire. On the edge of the square, a quiet beverage shop is located at the end of the street. It is located slightly away and looks much cleaner than the previous noisy exchange square. There is a small flower garden surrounding the store, and a small patch of sunflowers emitting warm light dances and sways in the flower garden. As if it senses someone approaching, the sunflowers on the ground actually lift their flower plates and look at Su Yu. Su Yu looked down and saw a cute smiling face surrounded by golden petals. Is this the sunflower from Plants vs. Zombies? Different from Su Yu's surprise, Ziu, who was leading the way, crossed the flower garden very calmly. I guess she was not surprised. Come on, there are a lot of weird things here. Hearing this, Su Yu nodded, glanced at the plaque with the word Midsummer engraved on the beverage shop, and followed Ziu as he pushed the door in. The crisp sound of wind chimes sounded in the store, and the store manager in a long skirt-made outfit looked up at the bar with a gentle temperament. Xiao Xi, have you got another guest? Different from the briskness of the girl, the store manager's voice had a touch of softness. Yeah, there are a lot of new people in the park recently. Saying hello, Ziu took Su Yu to find a free table and sat down, then greeted the store manager again. Sister Yunling, please have 2 cups of green shade without ice, thank you. While Ziu was ordering, Su Yu looked around at the entire beverage shop. The decoration style was simple and exquisite, with an elven flavor, and various exotic plants decorated the interior. The light source in the store seems to be provided by sunflowers and moon grass scattered everywhere. The light is bright but not dazzling, and has a faint power to make people feel peaceful. The decoration is good. Although Sister Yunling is an employee, she is very powerful. She studied with an elf master for a long time before. With her ability, she can definitely re-examine to become a contractor, but she doesn't like fighting very much, so she opened a small shop like this here. Ziu looked at the busy store manager at the bar, her eyes full of yearning, and introduced Su Yu with a smile. Soon, 2 cups of turquoise drinks were served. Guests, please use it slowly. Thank you. The store manager gently pushed the drink in front of Su Yu. After hearing the voice of thanks, he curled his eyes and gave Su Yu a special elf etiquette, then turned and returned to the bar. Try it quickly, it's delicious. I'll treat you to this cup. I, Ziyu, have always been well known for my service attitude. Ziyu on the opposite side bit her straw and said calmly while drinking. The drink in the glass was completely green, with some fluorescence undulating in it. Su Yu took a sip. A fresh breath, as if early spring had arrived, and all things were budding, moistened from Su Yu's mouth, and then converged on his head. Su Yu's throbbing head quickly calmed down. You tasted elf tea, green shade. You have obtained the blessing state of tranquility, which lasts for 10 minutes. The system prompt sounded, Su Yu's eyes lit up, and he picked up the green shade and drank slowly. Not bad. Su Yu's evaluation was quite serious this time. Seeing this, the smile on Ziyu's face grew deeper, as if she was the one being praised. Okay, the chat is over, let's get down to work. Clapping her hands, Ziyu took out an exquisite tablet computer. After several operations, a beautiful city model was projected on the dining table. It could be zoomed in or out as Ziyu's fingers manipulated it. This is the entire Reincarnation Paradise City, but the paradise is constantly expanding. The data here is already 2 weeks ago, but don't worry, every other month, we will update the information on it simultaneously. Ziyu stood up and pointed at the virtual projection on the table, coughed twice, and continued to introduce. Let me first tell you about the most important buildings in the park. Our current location is here, Tongdianhu Trading Square. This is one of the 3 major trading markets with the most people in the park. A square in the model quickly flew out and zoomed in. The towering giant pillar in the middle was particularly obvious. Go in this direction and you will find the center of the paradise. A red curve emerges from the square model and gradually spreads towards the center of the city. Mosquitoes don't really cover the park too much, so I expanded it a bit. In fact, I feel that in addition to the killing in the mission world, there are also many highlights to write about in the huge and magical city of Samsara Paradise. Let's see the response to this chapter. If readers think it's good, I can describe more of the daily life in the park as a refresher. Chapter 23. In the tea shop called Midsummer, there is always a fresh and timeless fragrance of tea. A low-pitched elf aria gently echoes in the shop. The exotic flowers and plants placed everywhere will also follow the melody from time to time. Undulating and swaying. A handful of 7 or 8 customers were scattered around the shop, drinking tea or chatting, but most of them spoke softly and in soothing tones, as if they were all trying to maintain the indifference and tranquility of this remote shop. In the corner of the shop, Ziyu, who was still explaining, kept her tone soft, but just enough for Su Yu to hear clearly. The central area is the core of the paradise. The entire paradise city is also built around the central area by generations of contractors and workers. Only the characteristic buildings here are created by the park itself, and they have the ability to transform people. Although it has been explained many times, Ziyu's eyes still inevitably show a trace of enthusiasm every time it is her turn. Attribute Strengthening Hall, Equipment Strengthening Hall, Skill Upgrading Hall, Arena, Trial Ground. Every time Ziyu said a name, a building would fly out from the central area of the virtual city on the table and zoom in. These special buildings have become the foundation for all contractors to continue to grow stronger. Of course, there are definitely more special buildings in the central district than these, but at this stage, these are the only ones we have access to. The central area is probably like this, and the rest are some special areas in the park. After explaining the central area, Ziyu sat back in her seat, bit the straw, moistened her dry throat, and continued to point to the virtual city road. This is Machinery Street. Most of the technological creations can be found here, ranging from long guns and short cannons to nuclear bombs and mechas. As long as you have enough paradise coins, you can buy them all. My tablet was also customized there. Here are the other 2 large trading markets. Together with Tongdi and Mao Square, the 3 almost cover 80% of the equipment trading volume in the entire Paradise City. However, these 2 places are far away from us. In fact, Tongdian May Plaza is completely sufficient. Your buying and selling needs are up, unless what you need is extremely rare. This is a food court, where countless delicacies from all over the world are gathered here. Specialty delicacies from all over the world, such as the spirit of the food halberd, the little master of China, and the prisoner of food, are all competing here. The dragon's liver and the phoenix's marrow are not empty words. This is Forge Street. After talking eloquently for a full hour, Zio gave an overview of the many areas, fame, power, and various taboos in Paradise City. After taking a long breath, Zio frowned and looked at the already dry water glass. After hesitating for a moment, she looked in front of Su Yu again and found that he had only drank half of the green shade. She felt slightly happy and then turned to face bar counter. Sister Yunling, please have another glass of green shade, thank you. Hold on. During the waiting period, Zio had already taken back the virtual city on the table, waiting for Su Yu to slowly digest the information just now. After a while, Zio, who had picked up the straw again, looked at Su Yu's slightly closed eyes and opened them. Knowing that the other party had almost sorted them out, she continued to speak. Brother, is there anything else unclear? You just said that I can only stay in the paradise for 3 days. After the contractor completes the task and leaves the derivative world, he only has 3 days to stay in the park, and then he will be sent back to the real world. It will take about a week or so before he will be recalled again and start the next derivative world. After listening to Zio's explanation, Su Yu frowned slightly. He was more interested in this magical paradise city than the boring real world, but his stay of only 3 days was too short and he couldn't explore too much of the area. 3 days? Is there any way to increase the stay time? Well, all we have to do is work hard to survive and constantly improve our level. I heard that high-level contractors will also stay longer, and some will even stay in the park permanently. After saying that, Zio looked at Su Yu's still frowning brow. Oh, don't be discouraged. Since you have passed the contractor assessment task in the paradise, you will definitely have a few attribute points on your hand. When the time comes, go to the attribute enhancement hall to strengthen it. When you return to the real world, you will be a super soldier. The plot of the king returning to the city, the Dragon King is back, hehe. As she said that, Zio raised her eyebrows frivolously. It wasn't until she looked into Su Yu's calm eyes that she stopped the ambiguous smile that had just appeared on her lips. So cold. After muttering to herself, Zio coughed twice to relieve her embarrassment and said seriously. Actually, the real world also has many benefits. The place is wider, you are less likely to get into trouble, you have family and friends, and you don't need to spend money on paradise coins. Zio counted the benefits of the real world one by one with her fingers, but her tone became obviously depressed when she mentioned the paradise coins. Unlike contractors who can only stay in the paradise for 3 days, workers are just the opposite. They only have 3 days per month to return to the real world. Living in the paradise is not easy. They spend most of their time living in this paradise city and are a necessary condition for maintaining the operation of this huge city. They are blood, nourishment, and gears. The workers were the losers in the first contractor assessment. Although they luckily did not lose their lives, they also lost the qualification to become contractors and became workers. Compared with the 10-day world mission of contractors, they only go back and forth to the derivative world once every 2 months, and the park does not have too high requirements for them, as long as they can get through and survive. This may sound wonderful, but in fact it is not. The paradise's attitude towards them is a bit similar to the naughty students in school who are abandoned by the teacher. Behind the seeming indulgence is extreme indifference. All gifts given by fate have already been marked with a secret price. Some of the park's permissions and special buildings are not open to employees. They have very limited ways to improve their strength. They cannot cope with the bi-monthly world tasks and can only survive by relying on contractors. However, this is undoubtedly a poison to quench thirst, and life and death are controlled by others. Losing part of the authority means that it is difficult to improve the strength. The lack of strength has caused workers to survive in the increasingly difficult derivative world, doing nothing, not only unable to obtain resources normally like contractors, but also suffering huge losses. In such a vicious cycle, most workers are actually struggling to survive in the face of fear of death, struggling to survive in the plight of scarcity of resources. Their only way out is to develop skills. Trade, machinery, forging, medicine, even planting, food, games, and entertainment. Only by possessing a skill, performing it to the extreme, and becoming a truly competent employee can one have a chance to regain the attention of the paradise and even be promoted to a contractor again. This is the paradise of reincarnation. Although it is extremely cruel, it is also extremely fair. The strong live, the weak die. In paradise, the definition of powerful is not so narrow as to be limited to strength. But if you are incompetent in writing and martial arts, then I'm sorry, but garbage has no value. The more he understands various information about the paradise, the more Su Yu understands the rules of survival in the paradise. The world is unkind and treats all things as stupid dogs. The core concept followed by the paradise is that the weak can eat the strong, and natural selection. He very much agrees with this kind of cruelty. Thin justice. Across the small table, the tone of Ziyu's narration has gradually lowered, and gradually fell silent. Seeing the deepness in Su Yu's eyes when he was thinking, Ziyu was a little frightened. She was very familiar with this look, which was unique to Ren too. The person with the same gaze last time almost killed through the derivative world she was in. All the powerful people with names and surnames were slaughtered. It is no exaggeration to describe it as killing people and flooding the fields with blood. She is because she was too weak, she survived without arousing that man's interest, but the look in his eyes she would never forget. Forcibly suppressing the urge to tremble, Ziyu rubbed her stiff face and tried to force out a smile, preparing to end the business as soon as possible. Okay, now that the explanation is over, let's talk about the cost. How many? The explanation is a product introduction and there is no charge. This is what is charged. Ziyu waved the tablet in her hand. What I just said is just a rough idea. The information collected in this tablet is more comprehensive, and it also comes with the locations of many rare shops in the city. It also includes after-sales service. Our Chamber of Commerce will update the data regularly. One payment, lifetime enjoyment, 100 points of paradise coins. Make a deal. Seeing the girl opposite her patting her chest in assurance, Su Yu didn't bargain. The information was very comprehensive and worth the price. Hey, you received 100 paradise coins from contractor No. 13,215. Thank you boss. After seeing the paradise coins coming in, Ziyu quickly put her fear behind her. She held the tablet with both hands and handed it to Su Yu with a smile. She took out a fancy magazine and a silver card again. Put it on the table. Boss, here are the gifts, the latest issue of the park newsletter and the park pass. Paradise News. Su Yu was the first to pick up the magazine. In addition to the 4 characters Paradise Express on the cover, there were also several lines of titles arranged in sequence. Inventory of top 10 famous amusement park scenes, with Ultra HD video. Annual Paradise Sand Sculpture Character Selection List. The undeniable grievances and hatreds between the God Emperor and the Blood Sect. The annual Paradise Racing competition is about to begin. There are no rules or restrictions. As long as you are fast enough, strong enough, and crazy enough, come and experience the real speed and passion. The Storm Adventure Group is recruiting, please don't disturb the weak. This thing seems interesting. Su Yu browsed through it roughly. The magazine was thick and rich in content. The pictures inside were basically movable pictures. When he turned to the recruitment page for the adventure group, the woman in the picture looked Su Yu up and down, and even she winked at him. This magazine should have used magic technology from the Harry Potter world. Putting away the tablet and magazine, Su Yu picked up the card on the table. The card was all silver and white, with a flashing yellow logo in the middle, a pattern similar to a steering wheel, and the number 10 in the upper right corner. Is this pass issued by the park? No, the Paradise doesn't care about such trivial matters. Ziyu glanced at the silver card in Su Yu's hand and continued. This pass is issued by the Wanderer Chamber of Commerce. 80% of the various vehicles in the park are provided by the Wanderer Chamber of Commerce. The pass card is only a small part of the business, although these vehicles are of little use to high-level contractors. But it is very popular among the lower class. After all, the park is too big. With our walking distance, it will take at least 1 or 2 hours to get to the central area from here, but it only takes 10 minutes with the pass, which is convenient and affordable. By the way, the Cyclonus competition mentioned in the newsletter is also organized by the Wanderer Chamber of Commerce. It's very interesting and exciting. I highly recommend it. After mentioning the Cyclonus competition, Ziyu became obviously a lot more excited, which was in contrast to her original gentle and cute appearance. She seemed to be restless. But this is normal in the Paradise. In the Paradise, the threat of death is always present, and the high pressure of survival envelops everyone in the Paradise equally, whether it is an employee, a contractor, or a hunter like Su Yu Bai. Under this kind of high pressure, everyone needs some channels to vent. In addition to the ever-busy arena, various exciting competitions that pursue adrenaline secretion have emerged as the times require. The drag race is one of them, and very popular. Putting away the bonus pass, Su Yu was not going to delay. 3 days were precious. He wanted to become stronger as soon as possible, but there was still a hulk in his mind that he had not dealt with. Gone. Okay, goodbye boss. After paying the money, the guy was obviously much more enthusiastic. After leaving the midsummer tea shop, Su Yu first went to the exchange square to find an unoccupied stall and hung up the only primary mechanical modification scroll that needed to be processed. This thing was marketable and priceless, but what he needed was equally precious. After marking in front of the stall that only forging knowledge scrolls of the same level and above could be exchanged, Su Yu ignored the crowd that had gathered around him and walked straight out of the square. Now he wanted to go to the central area first. Arriving outside the exchange square and finding an open space, Su Yu took out the park pass card and pressed the yellow sign in the center of the card according to the way Zihu said before. A mechanical female voice came from the card. Please tell me your destination. Attribute Enhancement Hall. Sorry, the central area is inaccessible to vehicles. The nearest location of the target has been located. Please wait. Positioning completed, searching for nearby free vehicles. Search completed. Guests, please wait. The vehicle will arrive at the designated location in 3 minutes. The service is good, and it looks like it's a private car. After hearing the prompt, Su Yu, who originally thought it would be a bus, was a little surprised. The quality of this gift was good. 3 minutes passed in a blink of an eye. Su Yu looked at the big cat running quickly from a distance with strange eyes. The furry body, brown stripes, 8 galloping legs and the big tail swinging behind it all made him look more and more familiar. Is this my vehicle? The cat bus has arrived, please get on. The estimated travel time is 10 minutes. It was a childhood dream that came true. Su Yu happily got into the compartment behind the cat bus. The soft seats inside were just like those in anime. The furry touch and the warmth from his fingertips made Su Yu endure it. I couldn't help but masturbate several times. When Su Yu sat down, the cat bus roared excitedly, and the sign on its forehead jumped to the words North Gate of the Central District. Its 8 fleshy legs exerted force one after another and galloped forward quickly. You have arrived at your destination. Please get off the car. This service consumes 1 access point. The current balance in the card is 9. After folding the number in the upper right corner and it turned into a 9 o'clock pass, Su Yu looked at the cat bus that had already run away. This thing was a great experience. Although it was fast, it didn't feel bumpy at all. The 10-minute journey was spent happily stroking the cat. It also passed quickly. Looking back, Su Yu took out his tablet, pressed the navigation on it, and began to approach the Attribute Enhancement Hall. Chapter 24. The central area is not large, at least the area that Su Yu can reach is not large, and most of the rest of the area is shrouded in fog. Following the guidance of the navigation system, Su Yu quickly arrived in front of a magnificent building. The building was completely black, as if made of pig iron, and exuded a cold and chilling feeling. Stepping into the door, Su Yu felt his eyes blurred, and the scene around him changed rapidly. When he regained consciousness again, he was already in a steel compartment of several square meters, with the clicking sound of mechanical operation constantly coming from all around, and a screen the curtain emerged out of thin air. Welcome to use the Attribute Enhancement Warehouse, please pay the opening fee. The opening fee is 100 paradise coins. Su Yu, who had already learned about the situation from Zihu, was not confused and clicked to pay. The current attributes of the hunter are as follows. Strength, 11. Agility, 6. Stamina, 12. Intelligence, 8. Charisma, 5. Hunters can allocate attribute points by themselves, the current attribute points are 8. Hey, the hunter's affinity attributes are checked to be strength and physical strength. Please give priority to the hunter to improve these 2 attributes. The opinion was very good, but Su Yu chose not to accept it. Under the premise that strength, body and intelligence could all be improved through talents, Su Yu was more willing to use his precious attribute points to improve his shortcomings. For a lone wolf, any shortcoming means a fatal weakness. As a hunter, he will not choose to join an adventure group. It is difficult to provoke powerful enemies for no reason in a derivative world. Explain to his teammates that since there is no support from the team, Su Yu must make himself impeccable. And if he wants to maintain his leading position over contractors of the same class, he must become all-round powerful. After thinking for a moment, Su Yu chose to increase 6 points of agility, 1 point of strength, and 1 point of intelligence. At this stage, there is not much need for intelligence. Strengthening begins. Because the strengthening will be accompanied by huge pain, whether to use the anesthesia function or not, this function is free. Does not start. Su Yu decisively refused. Paradise would not be so considerate. As mentioned before, all the gifts of fate have been secretly marked with price tags. Now if you choose anesthesia for a moment of comfort, you will definitely pay a higher price later. Besides, things like sore spots are commonplace for Su Yu. The sound of mechanical operation around him gradually increased, and attribute enhancement began. Waves of invisible microwaves came from the walls of the attribute enhancement chamber and began to gradually transform Su Yu's body. The skin membrane began to heat up, as if something had penetrated into the deepest part of Su Yu's body from all the pores. A numbing itching sensation exploded from Su Yu's body and quickly spread to the whole body. It's really enough. Su Yu gritted his teeth when he said this. This sore and numb feeling made him very familiar. In order to forge a large weapon, he had this feeling in his arms after swinging the hammer for 3 consecutive days, but that time it was only limited to his arms. But the soreness and numbness caused by the strengthening spread throughout the body. 10 minutes later, Su Yu, exuding light white smoke, walked out of the attribute enhancement hall. The white smoke on his body was not due to the explosion of the attribute enhancement chamber, but the water vapor produced by the contact between a large amount of evaporated sweat and skin with a sudden increase in body temperature. Although the process of improving attributes was painful, his body felt extremely comfortable after the improvement. He felt as if he had undergone an extra vigorous healthcare session, and all the meridians throughout his body were unblocked. Ha! The service is good. Come again next time. After making a joke, Su Yu took out the navigation system, and after hesitating for a moment between the directions of the trial ground and the arena, he strode towards the direction of the trial ground. It's just that the path forward is always a little skewed. The sudden increase of 6 points of agility makes him a little uncomfortable with his body that has become more agile. You know, his previous agility was only 6 points in total. He needs a hearty game now. Fighting, to adapt to this body whose strength and physical agility have become 12 points. Hunters are welcome to use the trial field, please select a mode. Auxiliary mode / actual combat mode. The interior of the spacious trial venue was like a large gymnasium, and Su Yu was standing in the center of the venue, looking around. It seems ordinary. Looking at the paradise prompts, he is not in a hurry in the auxiliary mode. What he needs now is to adapt to the suddenly stronger attributes as soon as possible. Enable actual combat mode. The actual combat mode consumes 10 points of paradise coins per minute, yes / no payment. Pay. Combat mode is on, the mechanical doll will appear in 30 seconds, please be prepared in advance. The beep disappeared, and the surrounding gymnasium-like walls began to fluctuate, like a rubber brushing against graffiti. The ceiling and walls disappeared inch by inch, and what was revealed was a bleak scene of the Gobi Desert. The dazzling sunlight poured down from the dome, and the strong wind carrying fine sand roared past Su Yu's face. The gravel and clothes collided, making a rustling sound. Su Yu stood tall, his eyes slightly lowered, scanning the mechanical dolls that were gradually gathering around him, and a hint of purple slowly bloomed in his eyes. The time is up and the actual combat training begins. Ka-ka-ka. Intense mechanical friction sounds sounded, and the metal frenzy began to surge, like a colony of ants hunting, rushing towards Su Yu in the center. Ha ha ha. Come on. In an instant, countless broken parts exploded from the center, and a dense swarm of metal ants burst out of a gap, but it was quickly filled again. Happy. Densely packed claws and spikes came from all directions, but were swept away by a silver arm into metal debris all over the sky. The debris was scattered everywhere. The hard doll was like a piece of grass under Su Yu's silver palm, and it broke with a wave of his hand. But the killings keep coming. Apart from the black paint of the mechanical doll, almost no other colors could be seen. Occasionally, a few spikes penetrated Su Yu's arms, but apart from a few sparks, there were no scratches left. His current metallization has almost covered his entire body. A slight tingling sensation came from the back of his head, which was a warning from the instinct of the beast. Su Yu, who was fighting, tilted his head, and a slender sniper bullet passed through the corner of his eye, cutting a metal doll in front of him into 2 pieces. In addition to melee-type puppets, long-range puppets have also begun to be refreshed. The trial field will gradually increase the strength of the puppets based on Su Yu's strength. Dodging bullets, Su Yu casually unscrewed the head of a puppet that was coming towards him, twisted his waist and waved his arms. The round head separated from his hand, tearing open the air like a cannonball, and hit a puppet holding a sniper rifle on the edge of the battlefield. Smash it and fly it out. Feeling the faint tingling sensation between his eyebrows disappear, the corners of Su Yu's mouth curled up slightly. The warning of the beast's intuition, coupled with the extraordinary perception brought by 9 points of intelligence, allowed him to accurately lock the target even on such a chaotic battlefield. A few minutes later, the entire gobi was covered with metal limbs, and the sound of fighting became louder. Compared with before, the current doll has enhanced its capabilities and gradually began to compress Su Yu's space for movement. A heavy hammer behind him brought up a strong hunting wind and swung towards Su Yu's lower back, but Su Yu, whose hands were tightly entangled by several dolls, was unable to dodge at all. Clang! Like an ancient bell ringing, the huge sound silenced the entire battlefield for a moment. Su Yu staggered under the heavy blow, and dark blood spurted out from his mouth. His metallization was limited to his skin, and his organs were unable to withstand the violent shock under a blunt blow. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, the pain in Su Yu's chest and abdomen quickly disappeared. With 12 points of physical strength and an increase of more than 100 points of health, he was undoubtedly an excellent tank, but even so, the blood bars in his eyes were still there. A small part of it disappeared under this blow. Looking at the several dolls in front of him who were still hugging his arms tightly, Su Yu struggled hard, but still couldn't break free. Now the power of the dolls has been strengthened to the point where it is almost as good as him. Clang! There was another bell. Su Yu was hit hard again, blood spurted out. Looking at the half-disappeared blood bar, Su Yu's eyes became fierce, the silver palm he was holding began to turn purple, his fingers twisted, and his fingertips stretched. The 10 fingers gradually turned into 10 spikes. Puff! The palms turned into sharp claws, penetrated the puppet's steel chest and crushed the energy core inside. Su Yu felt his arms loosen. The puppet holding his arms tightly had lost its strength. His eyes were flashing red before. Guang's electronic eyes immediately became dim, and his body fell limp. But the purple meaning in Su Yu's eyes became more and more intense. After the restraint disappeared, he dodged sideways, and the heavy hammer that struck for the 3rd time hit the ground heavily, grazing the corner of his clothes. Then the hands that penetrated the doll's chest turned and grasped the doll's spine. Then his arms exerted force, and the puppet was lifted up by Su Yu, like 2 one-legged bronze human beings held upside down. Bang! 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 The puppet in his hand waved away, and a sword-storm-like move set off a whirlwind in the center of the battlefield. The dull sound of collision resounded endlessly, and the puppets flew out from the center of the battlefield. Hey! Su Yu stopped when he felt that everything around him was empty. There were broken metal parts within 3 meters around him. After taking a breath, he casually threw away the spine with a metal head attached to it. Drops of blood dripped from his fingertips, leaving a pool of dazzling red on the dusky gobi. There was only engine oil and condensate in the doll's body, and blood seeped out bit by bit from Su Yu's fingers. When his hands were trapped just now, he used fire to forcibly melt the metallized finger skin and turned it into 10 sharpened fingers. Claw, and then he was able to get out of trouble. But at present, the only area he can metallize is the skin membrane. The result of this is that the flesh, and nerves of the 10 fingers are squeezed into a ball of mud. As the saying goes, fingers are connected to the heart, and the severe pain kept tearing at Su Yu's sanity, but he just smiled more wildly. The right hand turned into a claw and pulled up the heavy hammer from the ground. The boiling fire wrapped around it, and the heavy hammer quickly melted and took shape. When the fire was gone, a 2-foot-long Fengtian painted halberd suddenly appeared in Su Yu's hand. The halberd was covered with bloody net lines, which were stained by the blood seeping from his fingertips. A wave of puppets has gathered in front of them again, and the crowds are so dark that it's hard to see the edges. Su Yu stood on the tall pile of corpses piled up with broken limbs, with purple flames in his eyes, and Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand waved away the air waves. Come! Start the next round of fighting! The sound of killing shook the sky, and countless dolls gathered in a frenzy and rushed towards Su Yu. However, as they approached, they were smashed to pieces by the Fang Tian painted halberd, turning into pieces and scattered limbs all over the sky. Come! Kill! Ha 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 ha! Chapter 25. The actual combat mode ends, the hunter is dead. It took 13 minutes, and a total of 130 paradise points were consumed. At the entrance of the training ground, Su Yu, who was teleported out, was looking at his body up and down. He had at least 4 or 5 weapons inserted into his body just now. After more than 10 minutes in trial mode, the doll's strength increases sharply. After he was first knocked out by an energy cannon, he was immediately pierced by a long sword of at least blue quality, and then a group of dolls with strength and speed exceeding him rushed forward. Su Yu managed to hold on for 3 minutes with his metallized defense and super long blood volume, but in the end he was hacked to death with random swords. The death was extremely tragic. Fang Tian's painted halberd was broken by the energy cannon, all his internal organs were shattered, and the body was covered with all kinds of weapons. The feeling of death was extremely real, but after being teleported out of the trial field, his body returned to an intact state, and even his self-injured fingers were restored to their original state. Interesting. This time he played very well. He clenched his fists and felt that the discomfort caused by the sudden increase in attributes had disappeared. He liked this mode. Looking back on the entire process of the actual combat mode, he had a huge advantage in the early stage. The simultaneous improvement of his 4 attributes was undoubtedly evident. His powerful strength, keen reactions, and superb perception combined with metallized defense made him nearly invincible on the battlefield. Especially when equipped with a long-handled heavy weapon at the back, it becomes even more powerful. However, there are many flaws. Firstly, the attack damage is still lacking, and secondly, the mobility is seriously insufficient. It is extremely dangerous to be restricted on the battlefield. Thinking of the heavy metal hammer that almost beat him to death, Su Yu's face froze. As a blacksmith, he has always hammered iron and hammered people in his life, but this time he was almost beaten to death by others. This is a great shame. Su Yu covered his face, feeling a little complicated. You must get a good mount if you have the chance, otherwise you won't be able to run on the battlefield by yourself. Also, after returning, he re-smelted the alloy war hammer into a giant heavy hammer. Next time whoever dared to use the hammer against him, he would take out the giant hammer and call the opponent to death, letting them know the weight of the ancestral blacksmith. After briefly sorting out his thoughts, Su Yu entered the trial field again. He had experienced the actual combat mode, and now he wanted to experience the auxiliary mode. He would not be disappointed even if he thought about it. Auxiliary mode has been selected, please select the summoning mirror level. It was still the same gymnasium, and 3 options appeared in front of Su Yu. These 3 options were low-level mirroring, intermediate mirroring, and high-level mirroring. The prices are marked below the 3 options. The basic mirror costs 100 paradise coins per hour, the intermediate mirror costs 1000 paradise coins per hour, and the advanced mirror costs 10,000 paradise coins per hour. Looking at his paradise coin balance, he now still has 11,886 paradise coins. He has only consumed less than 1,000 paradise coins since entering the park, and the intermediate mirror is 1,000 points per hour. Hope it's worth the money. High-level mirrors are obviously not something Su Yu can afford at this stage. He still has many things to buy in the future, but he can't just throw everything on it. As for low-level mirrors, that thing probably won't have much effect on Su Yu now. After choosing to pay 1,000 paradise coins, a milky white ball of light emerged. The light dissipated, and an overly majestic, even fat figure appeared. The surrounding environment also changed simultaneously. A large area of green grassland began to spread from the feet of Su Yu to the surroundings. The sound of rumbling water could be heard in the distance. It was a waterfall that was rapidly forming, and the dense water vapor began to spread. 8 horses green-eared mirror image has been summoned, coming from the 5 elements world of Wushan. Su Yu has watched the anime 5 Elements of Wushan, and he is familiar with Luer, the flexible fat man among the 8 horses. Luer and Su Yu's fighting methods are very similar. The same hardening of the body coupled with Bajiquan, he and Su Yu, the performance of the battle between Dai Yaishan and Chu was quite impressive. But unlike Su Yu's metallization achieved through talent, Luer's metallization came through the blessing of demonic power. Seeing the fat man in front of him gnawing on chicken legs, Su Yu didn't show any contempt. Although the man looked obese, he was indeed a strong man. After swallowing the last bite of chicken in his mouth, Luer looked at Su Yu. He showed no doubts about why he appeared here. This was a projection summoning, not the arrival of the real body. They knew the meaning of their existence. Let me introduce, my name is Luer. What fighting style are you good at? Bare hands, heavy weapons. Su Yu's words were concise and to the point. Oh, I understand. I'm average when it comes to weapons, but I can do it with my bare hands. So without further ado, let me help you. As soon as he finished speaking, Luer didn't care about Su Yu's reply. After giving a light drink, his body was covered in dazzling gold, with only the head and shoulders turning green. Then his feet shook the ground, and his body was like an arrow, rushing towards Su Yu. Clang! A loud thump echoed, and the green-eared golden fist was firmly blocked by a silver arm. The two colors of gold and silver were clearly distinct, but they complemented each other. Su Yu's purple eyes poked out from behind his arm, looked at Luer's slightly surprised eyes, and spoke softly. Just what I wanted. Taking advantage of Luer's daze, Su Yu's right arm to block the punch suddenly moved down, swinging Luer's right hand away, then stepped forward, pressed down with his left hand, and resisted the heavy blow from the other upper hand. With a fist, the whole person has already reached within the green ear's arms. At the same time, the right elbow has already been raised to the height of the helix, and following the forward force of the shock step, the elbow is struck downwards. The tip of the silver elbow hit the common carotid artery next to Luer's neck. The huge force caused his body to sink, but he was met with Su Yu's fierce upper knee. Bang! The knee strike did not shatter Luer's nose bone as Su Yu imagined. Instead, it was firmly grasped by a big hand. After receiving Su Yu's elbow attack, Luer didn't feel faint at all. The left knee was captured, and Green Ear's 10 fingers tightly clasped Su Yu's joint like an iron hoop. Severe pain hit, Su Yu gritted his teeth, without caring about the clasped joint, he lowered his leg and pressed down, while his right elbow felt like a gunshot. Go straight to the back of the Green Ear's head. A strong hunting wind hit from behind his head, and his green-eared pupils shrank sharply. He had no choice but to let go of his clasped knees, and his waist and abdomen rolled with force. He avoided Su Yu's elbow and retreated several meters away. After standing up again, the smile on his face had long faded, and he looked at Su Yu with eyes full of admiration. Beiji, hanging ears and touching elbows, good martial arts. This refers to the move Su Yu used against him before. He, who is also good at Beiji, naturally knows this move. When a stunned person lost the opportunity and his hands were swung away one by one, he secretly thought something was wrong. Being familiar with the characteristics of Beiji, he quickly realized that the next hit was not on the neck, but behind the ears. Therefore, he gathered all the demon power in his neck and behind his ears in advance, so that he could stay awake even when his weak point was hit by Su Yu's elbow, and look for opportunities to counterattack. After staring deeply into Su Yu's eyes for a moment, the green-eared eyes moved down and looked at Su Yu's knees. It has not yet been metallized and is still flesh and blood. Now Su Yu's knees are bleeding profusely, and 5 blood holes surround Su Yu's knees. Ruthless enough. This is Su Yu's last blow. After his knee joint was grabbed by Luer, he did not choose to retreat, but fiercely chose to sacrifice one leg to hit Luer hard. With the knee joint buckled, he lowered his leg and pressed down. If Luer didn't let go, Su Yu's entire patella would be torn out. Of course, while pulling out the patella, Luer will also be hit directly in the back of the head by Su Yu's fierce elbow. This ruthless attitude towards killing enemies made Luer admire him very much. Su Yu, who was opposite him, didn't have as many mental activities as Luer. After hearing Luer's 2 compliments, he just dismissed them as farts. He didn't know why Luer was waiting for standing still. Anyway, he was waiting for the wound on his knee to get better. The 12 o'clock physical strength greatly enhanced his recovery speed. The bleeding has stopped, and the numb knee has begun to regain consciousness. Except for the still severe pain, the movement of the left leg is no longer affected. Su Yu looked up at Luer, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. Continue. Chapter 26. On the green plain, 2 people stood on opposite sides, facing each other. One was powerful, the other was big and round, but both were covered with gold and silver, made of copper and iron. Continue. After listening to Su Yu's words, Luer also felt a little itchy. People who practice martial arts are mostly aggressive, and both of them have a hard-on style, which can be said to be a good match. But after thinking about the remaining projection time limit, Luer still waved to Su Yu. Forget it, I won't be able to stop fighting for a while longer. Our time is limited. I don't think you summoned me here just to fight. Thinking about the cost of 1,000 points an hour, Su Yu's eyes twitched, and his surging fighting spirit quickly calmed down. Any advice? In terms of simple moves and skills, there's not much difference between you and me. There's not much worth pointing out. The will to fight is not bad, tisk, he is cruel and evil. After saying that, Luer glanced at Su Yu's knee that had begun to heal, and raised his eyebrows slightly. But it just lacks strength. Strength? Su Yu frowned. He knew that Luer was not talking about pure strength attributes. The strength of the boxing technique is unpredictable and the weather is endless, but I am only good at breaking the strength. Collapse. You and I will know after one punch. Good. After the two decided on the method, they both stepped forward and faced each other with their fists. The distance between their fists was only a few inches. Suddenly there was a loud thunder, and gold and silver fists clashed with a loud sound. As soon as his fist made contact, Su Yu was suddenly hit by a continuous force, like waves rushing and the Milky Way pouring down. With one blow, Su Yu raised his arm high and took several steps back. It was obvious that only his arm was hit, but he felt that his whole body was trembling. On the other hand, Luer still maintained his punching posture and stood firm. Do not move. What's this? After standing still, Su Yu looked at the green-eared fist with bright eyes. Naturally, there was also Bengjin in the Beiji strength, and he asked himself that he had some experience with this. He had also fought Xing Ai's half-step collapse fist and Wing Chun's Kun Jin fist in his early years, but they never had such an effect. This was definitely not an effect that simple boxing techniques could achieve. This is collapse. Luer looked at Su Yu's eyes shining and felt a little proud. Collapse is when the mountain collapses and the ground collapses. Its strength penetrates into the bones and breaks everything. Probably feeling that Guang's explanation was too abstract, Luer took Su Yu to a huge rock by the waterfall and said, "Try breaking this stone into pieces, using all your strength." Su Yu nodded, and then stood in front of the boulder, with his lower limbs in a lunge, shaking his hips and closing his waist, accumulating strength. The moment the silver fist collided with the stone surface, the boulder seemed to have been hit by artillery. The gravel flew away, and the whole boulder cracked into several pieces and fell down with a crash. That's right, the muscles and bones are integrated into one, strong and explosive. Seeing this, Luer made a serious comment. Then, he walked to another boulder and lunged to punch in the same posture as Su Yu. The fists and stones struck each other, but unlike Su Yu's previous powerful blow, after Luer's blow, the whole boulder trembled. After Luer closed his fist and stood still, the boulder made a soft sound and cracked countless times. Rubbles tumbled down. Is this an jin? Similar, but very different. Green continued to explain. Whether it is the lightness, darkness, and transformation of form and meaning, or the hardness, softness, and emptiness of Tai Chi, to put it bluntly, they are just different ways of using the same kind of strength, but they do not refer to three different kinds of strength. Ming Jin integrates strength. As one, the dark energy is harmonious and accessible, and the energy and spirit are unified, that's all. And my strength is different from simply using muscle and bone strength. Come forward, touch my arm with your hand, and feel it carefully. Luer got into a punching stance and called Su Yu. Following Luer's instructions, Su Yu touched his arm with his palm. As Luer exerted his strength, Su Yu felt a strange trembling sensation piercing through his palm and quickly spreading throughout his body. Is this a shock? Su Yu said uncertainly. No, it's the breath of the earth's lakes, mountains, and rivers. There was even a hint of piety in the green-ear's tone. This is the biggest gain I have gained from practicing boxing for more than 20 years, and then using my demonic power to externally sense the world. This is collapse. The sound is green and proud. Su Yu closed his arms and cupped his hands, stepped back a few steps, and bowed in obeisance. Thank you, Su Yu. Skill is close to the Tao, this is the gift of preaching. Luer did not refuse and accepted the gift calmly, but she looked at Su Yu with even more admiration. Ha ha ha. You and I are both used to Beiji, and your temperament suits my taste. Green-eared laughed a few words, pointed at the waterfall in front of him and said. Time is limited, so we won't be polite. Then I will put the demonic power into your body, using the demonic power to simulate the collapse of strength and shake the muscles and bones. Then you sit cross-legged under the waterfall, assisted by the high pressure of the external river, and feel its meaning internally. After saying that, Luer slapped Su Yu on the back and slapped his whole body towards a stubborn rock under the waterfall. The 1000 points in the auxiliary mode are not in vain. You must know that in the actual combat mode, Su Yu only spent 130 points of paradise coins. In the auxiliary mode, the paradise will search the world for the most suitable development path for the contractor. Projection, of course, depends on your personality whether you can win the favor of the projection character, how much the projection character is willing to spend, and how much you can learn. It is quite in line with the characteristics of the park. The opportunity is thrown to you. Whether you make a lot of money or lose everything depends on your own talents. The 1-hour projection summoning time passed quickly. Under the waterfall, Su Yu was still sitting cross-legged on the stubborn rock, motionless. The rock was slippery and the waterfall was endless, but Su Yu sat firmly on it as if he had taken root. Time passed slowly, and only thunderous rumbles could be heard in the trial field. At this time, Su Yu had gradually fallen into trance. The heavy pressure, noise, and chill from the outside world had gradually become inaudible, and only the vibration inside his body was getting stronger. From the bone marrow, to the internal organs, to the meridians, to the skin and flesh, everything began to tremble from the inside out. As time went by, the vibrations of the solid rocks under him and the waterfall above his head also appeared in Su Yu's perception one by one. The perception spread along the vibrations, and Su Yu seemed to hear the thick pulse of the mountains and the turbulent beating of the river. The earth, mountains, rivers, grass, trees, and lakes all flow into my chest. This is where the heaven and earth coexist with me, and all things are one with me. The next moment, the demonic power seeds in Su Yu's body exploded instantly, and the mountains and seas surged, and the sky collapsed and the earth collapsed. Su Yu opened his eyes fiercely, his whole body shook with strength, the rocks broke apart, and the waterfall stopped flowing. The hunter learns the skill on his own, fist intent collapse, special. Tip: this skill is a special type and cannot be strengthened through the reincarnation paradise. It can only be understood by the hunter himself. At the same door of the training ground, Su Yu appeared again, his body still restored to its original state. The water stains on his body and the bloody holes on his knees had disappeared, but the divine light in his eyes was shining brightly. Turning his head and taking a deep look at the trial field behind him, Su Yu strode away. This time it was a great harvest, and it is worthy of its reputation as a special building created by the park. Learning Fist Yi and Beng was of great help to Su Yu. It opened the door to a new world for him, a door to Taoism through fists. This is the true sense of transcendence. There are indeed countless miracles in all heavens and realms. Su Yu didn't expect that a character who disappeared after only 10 minutes of appearance in the anime he had watched before would bring him such a big surprise. In the 5 elements of Wushan, the 8 horsemen and Green Ear don't have much playing time. After a battle with Chu, the Demon Mountain, he was seriously injured, and was later inhaled by Chi Ji, the head of the 8 horsemen, who was inhaled the hallucinogenic poison gas, and died after being beheaded. The end was disastrous. Except for Beiji's fighting scene, he didn't leave much impression on Su Yu. Unexpectedly, he turned out to be a master who entered Taoism with fists. But then I thought about it, De Yaishan Chu was already very close to the peak combat power in Wushan 5 Elements world, and it was not surprising that he could fight against him several times and even cause some trouble for Green Er. You must know that before obtaining the demon power, Luer was just a complete mortal. But after obtaining the demon power, his combat power increased greatly, which must be inseparable from his own qualifications and accumulated strength. Thank you. If you have the chance to go to Wushan 5 Elements, I will protect your life. We've finished exploring the trial grounds, where should we go next? Forget it, let's eat first. The food court is in this direction, right? Chapter 27. On the east side of the paradise, an area that is even larger than Tongtian Square is always crowded and bustling. Before entering the realm, a cloud of white smoke visible to the naked eye could be seen from a distance, which was formed by the concentration of extremely rich smoke from fireworks. Different from the fresh and elegant fragrance of tea in the small shop in midsummer, the alluring fragrance lingering in the food court is always mouth-watering and mouth-watering. I can't tell what the specific taste is, but the 7 flavors of salty, sweet, sour, spicy, fragrant, fresh, and bitter are all present. The interweaving and fusion create thousands of flavors. Su Yu followed this attractive fragrance and came to the main entrance of the food court. In front of the gate, there is a huge statue of a strange beast. Its body is as big as an ox, with a strong body, fur, and horns, and sharp claws and teeth. Its back feet are on the ground, its buttocks and tail are raised high, its front paws are lowered, and its front is stretched out. You can vaguely see the eyes growing under its armpits, and it is looking at the passers-by like a hungry tiger pouncing on food. Looking up, the statue's face is like a human face, but ferocious, with slender eyes like red carbon, and towering horns spiraling upward on the top of its head. The tiger's mouth is wide open under it, with teeth like sharp swords, jagged and intertwined. The lips are salivating, and the mouth is full of black holes that want to choose people to devour. True to the style of a paradise, after Su Yu admired the lifelike statue of the strange beast, he walked around the statue and strode into the fragrant and bustling food court. It is said to be a square, but in fact it is more like a huge fortress. When viewed from above, the entire food court looks like 3 overlapping rings, arranged from small to large, with a crosswalk running through the southeast, northwest, and northwest. In the middle is a huge square, which is the real food court, but that square is only open every time the god of cookery competition is held. At that time, the boiling fragrance of fireworks can even permeate the entire paradise city. Outside the square is a 3-ring food street surrounded by 3-story buildings. The outer ring food street is the most lively area, with a stream of people, a forest of shops, stalls, and carts, all kinds of snacks, and delicacies. Especially at night, it is even more grand. Central is much more elegant, with numerous restaurants and clean streets. You can find famous specialties and exotic foods from all the gourmet worlds here. As for the innermost level, there are only 10 shops there that are ranked among the top 10 in the annual God of Cookery competition. The basic requirement for participating in the God of Cookery competition is that on the premise that the food is delicious, it must also have extraordinary effects, either attribute improvement, status blessing, or treatment recovery, otherwise you will not even be qualified to enter. Most of the recovery food circulating in the exchange square comes from various restaurants in Central, except for a small portion obtained from the derived world. And it was this outer ring food street that Su Yu stepped into. As soon as he entered, the aroma of steaming food hit his face, salty, spicy, sweet, sour. Su Yu seemed to be able to taste various flavors from the fragrance, which caused the fluid in his mouth to secrete continuously. His Adam's apple rolled up and down. Su Yu swallowed and glanced around. Everything he could see was crowded with shops and stalls of all kinds, and for a moment he didn't know how to make a choice. I simply bought a bunch of snacks on the roadside and ate them while shopping. The charcoal grilled lamb is charred and fragrant. The red spicy powder is dotted with small white sesame seeds. It is wrapped in the roasted and crispy meat. It shines under the light and is stuffed into your mouth. First, the charcoal fried lamb is delicious, and then the spicy noodles mixed with the gravy roll over the tip of the tongue, and the meat is chewy, making it both fat and thin. The crystal shrimp dumplings are exquisite and small, and they are elastic when twisted. The tender shrimps are wrapped in the flexible dumpling skin. After one bite, they are sweet and crispy, and the soup is delicious. The large skewers of meat sausages are oily and moist, and the thin casings firmly lock in the fragrant but not tangy, oily but not greasy gravy. When you tear open the casings with your teeth, the smooth and hot oil will instantly melt in your mouth. It exploded, and my mouth was full of saliva. The black stinky tofu is tossed and stirred in the red sauce, and the green scallions and white minced garlic are mixed together to harmonize with each other. Take a light bite. The tofu is crispy on the outside, but soft and chewy on the inside. Press it lightly and you will feel full. The tofu in the sauce releases layers of rich flavor on the taste buds. The plump squid is choked into the hot oil, and the rising flames grill the outside of the squid skewers to a slightly browned color. The strong fragrance lingers. The squid meat sprinkled with spicy powder enters the mouth. The hot and churning touch first comes from the tip of the tongue, and continues to chew. It's the unique smoothness and tenderness of seafood, the crispiness on the outside, the smoothness and tenderness on the inside, and the spicy, salty dipping sauce that stirs in the mouth. Take another sip of the cold lemonade, squeeze the transparent ice cubes and bright yellow lemon slices scattered in the cup through the straw, roll up a big mouthful of cold water and pour into your mouth, filling you with the sweet and sour taste in an instant, filling the entire mouth. The hint of spiciness clinging to the tip of the tongue and the remaining greasiness in the throat were immediately washed away. Time slowly passed by as Su Yu was eating so much that Su Yu couldn't remember how many snacks he ate or how many shops he visited. This snack street seems to stretch endlessly, and there seems to be an endless supply of various delicacies. Su Yu didn't stop until he saw a Sichuan restaurant with a red sign on the roadside. I touched my belly and found that it was only half full. Now that the appetizers and snacks were finished, it was time to serve the main meal. When he pushed the door open, the unique aroma of spicy and delicious food hit his face and penetrated into his nose. Su Yu's stomach, where he had just loaded a lot of food, was filled with bursts of acid. Su Yu was reminded that he was still hungry. "Guest, what do you want?" A charming woman wearing a red cheongsam came forward. Although she was not tall, her figure made the gorgeous cheongsam look particularly elegant. After ordering, under the guidance of the woman, Su Yu came to a vacant mahogany seat and waited quietly. Everything in this store seems to be red seats, red ornaments, red dishes, and the red cheongsam. Although the store was bustling with people and excitement, Su Yu still didn't have to wait long before the dishes were served one by one. The first is the boiled meat slices in a large porcelain bowl. Thin slices of meat are piled in the red and spicy soup. The dense peppers almost fill all the gaps on the soup surface. The spicy smell of the hot oil is long-lasting. Long-lasting, rich aroma, tender meat slices, and all four flavors of Sichuan cuisine, numbing, spicy, fresh, and hot. The second dish is brown and shiny spicy chicken. Chicken breast cut into small pieces and dried chili peppers blend together in the iron pot and complement each other. During the stir-frying over a strong fire, the spicy and burnt dry chili peppers and the salty diced chicken meat are combined. The fresh and mellow flavor perfectly matches. The third course is the dongpo pork elbow, which is plump but not greasy, soft and chewy. Time passed quietly as Su Yu feasted. He was now like a glutton, plundering crazily in the food street to fill his hungry and thirsty stomach. By the time he finally walked out of the food court with a full stomach, 2 hours had passed. Wrong. Walking out of the long street, Su Yu, who was stroking his belly and walking forward, suddenly stood still. The expression of satisfaction on his face because of his full stomach quickly disappeared and became uncertain. He raised his head and looked up. The dowdy statue above his head stretched out its claws and lowered its head. Its eyes were blood red. Su Yu seemed to see the ultimate greed in it that could not be filled by swallowing the sky and the earth. Is there something wrong with this thing? Su Yu glanced around, and saw a flood of people pouring from the foot of the dowdy statue into the gate of the food street, but his face was still talking and laughing calmly. There was also a constant flow of people coming out of the gate, and there was nothing unusual about it either. Su Yu stared into Dowdy's blood-red eyes with cold eyes. Is it just for newcomers, or is there something wrong with me? I seem to have forgotten something. Su Yu patted his head, feeling a faint pain, and a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind. Since when did my head stop hurting? Chapter 28. In the spiritual space, the vast purple sea of fire is still boiling endlessly. Above the sea of fire is a star-studded night sky, dotted with countless brilliant light spots shining with golden light. Between the sea of fire and the night sky, a milky white transparent light ball floated quietly in the center, silently. In the light ball, the small piece of land like a floating island expanded again in a small circle. Su Yu stood on the edge of the floating island, looking down at the octagonal iron cage below with a gloomy expression. The mental body of Professor. There was no roaring, no venting, just sitting quietly in the middle of the ring, lowering his head and lowering his eyes. The double spiraling horns above his head were particularly eye-catching. Really? Is the problem my fault? Paradise City is a safe zone for all contractors. This is the first paradise rule mentioned by Yuzuki before. In the derivative world, paradise will indulge and even encourage contractors to fight each other, but it is never allowed in the city. This is an iron law that cannot be broken. The statue at the entrance of the food court is just a side effect. It can weakly stimulate people's appetite. Strictly speaking, it is a gain effect, which is equivalent to eating a plate of stomach strengthening and digestion tablets. Moreover, this effect is achieved through the sculptor's superb artistic expression and does not contain any extraordinary factors, so it is not within the limits of the paradise. It was only this time that he happened to meet Su Yu, who had a mental defect, and the combination of the two produced such an obvious effect. In the past 2 hours, Su Yu had eaten nearly 30 paradise coins worth of food, and his stomach felt like a bottomless pit. You know, with the consumption level of the park, if you just buy ordinary food, 10 points of park coins can meet the food needs for a day, and it is not shabby. He had eaten almost 3 days' worth of food in this one meal. With his 12-point constitution, his stomach was as bloated as a ball. He had to hold on to the wall while walking, which showed how much he had eaten. This kind of gourmet behavior seemed to be eating with his life. While Su Yu was eating, he didn't notice anything wrong at all. He didn't wake up until he walked out of the food court and was freed from the temptation of food. After observing the reactions of passers-by entering and exiting the square, Su Yu immediately rushed back to his exclusive room after judging that the dowdy statue at the entrance of the square was probably just an inducement. Since the problem does not come from the outside world, it must be internal trouble. In addition, the headache that has been bothering him before has disappeared for no reason. It must be that some unknown changes have occurred in Professor to him. As expected, Su Yu noticed something wrong as soon as he entered the spiritual space. The mental body of Professor the dowdy corner you see is generally the same. Bang! The view on the floating island was not clear enough, so Su Yu jumped directly into the octagonal cage below. Now that Su Yu has been strengthened, he is no longer as afraid of the strength of the Professor's mental body as before. The sound of landing attracted the attention of the Professor's mental body opposite. He raised his head and looked towards the sound, and happened to meet Su Yu's eyes. The four eyes faced each other, one pair was full of sharpness, and the other pair was full of confusion. Staring into the eyes of the Professor's spiritual body and noticing the confusion contained in them, Su Yu was stunned, and a trace of surprise flashed in his mind. This thing gave birth to thought. Who are you? Su Yu asked. The Professor opposite did not answer. The confusion in his eyes began to dissipate, and a hint of appetite appeared in his eyes. His huge body began to stand up, and the huge shadow completely enveloped Su Yu's figure. He looked down at the little guy in front of him and slowly uttered a syllable in his mouth. Hungry. Ask me again, who are you? The terrifying sense of oppression kept coming, and the wild instinct was warning wildly. Su Yu remained unmoved, looking up at the Professor's eyes that were starting to turn red, and his voice was cold. Hungry. It was like a muffled thunder exploded in the sky, and a roar came out of the Professor's mouth along with the turbulent air waves. Su Yu's clothes made a sound in the air waves, and the entire octagonal cage began to tremble violently. Before the sound waves subsided, a fist as big as a millstone crashed down, like a landmine exploding on the ring, and large amounts of dust rose up. The Professor pulled his arm out of the deep hole in the ground. It seemed that he missed the little one. Where did it go? He tore away the smoke with a wave of his big hand, and looked around for the little thing that looked familiar. The strength far exceeds mine, but the dexterity is not as good as mine. Behind the smoke, Su Yu, who had jumped away before the fist hit, looked at the Professor in front of him who was getting closer and felt slightly relieved. As long as he was not completely crushed, he would be beaten. As he thought, large plumes of smoke began to emerge from under the deep pit. This was his spiritual space. Although Su Yu's current intelligence attributes were far from the point where his wishes would come true, he could create something out of thin air. The smoke is still more than enough. In the thick smoke, the Professor's huge size was much more eye-catching than Su Yu's. The broad hands pulled away the smoke, and the violent wind and waves tore apart the surrounding fog, but it was quickly filled up again. The Professor looked at the white world in front of him in confusion, and he had just born consciousness. Still can't understand the situation in front of me. But the extreme hunger welling up from the bottom of his heart made him become increasingly violent. Come out! Small bug! The Professor looked up to the sky and roared, and the roar began to sound continuously in the octagonal cage. Large rocks bounced around like bullets, and deep pits spread all over the surface of the ring. In the corner of the arena, Su Yu looked coldly at the Professor in the center who was furiously attacking the floor. He tilted his head slightly to avoid a rock that was aimed at his head. A streamlined heavy javelin slowly appeared in his hand, sharp and sharp. The tip of the hole was shining with a penetrating cold light. Call out! A piercing roar came, followed by a roar. The Professor who was wreaking havoc in the center of the ring staggered. His thigh had been penetrated by a heavy javelin. The middle of the javelin was stuck by strong muscles, and the tail of the javelin was still going on. It was trembling, and the flesh and blood were continuously squeezed during the shaking. Waves of pain came from below, and the Professor's eyes became redder and brighter. He grabbed the javelin on his leg with his big hand and jerked it, bringing out a large swath of starlight. He ignored the big hole that penetrated the front and back of his thigh. He twisted his waist and threw it away. Arm! The javelin shot out of the air from his hand, followed the gap left in the mist when it came, and returned brazenly. Different from the swift speed when it came, it could be said to be majestic when it returned. The powerful kinetic energy brought out majestic wind pressure. The slender javelin flew out, but it smashed through a large amount of fog like a locomotive. The javelin landed and exploded into dozens of metal fragments, scattering a quarter of the fog in the octagonal cage, but there was nothing in the empty space except the big crater left in place. Call out! There was another roar, this time it penetrated the professor's shoulder blade. He screamed in pain and turned around to look, but there was still nothing but the thick white fog. He was hit by a javelin just behind him. The gap that was opened was once again filled with mist. Call out! It was the same roar again, this time from the lower back. His huge body and majestic muscles not only brought great power, but also made him a very conspicuous target. The professor took a few steps back. The awakening of his mind also brought about the unique emotion that accompanies wisdom, fear. The fear of dying again. He was scared. Fear death. Chapter 29. In the octagonal cage, the thick fog became denser. In the center of the ring, the spiritual body of Professor. But even so, low breathing sounds continued to come from the javelin pile, indicating the fact that this hedgehog was still alive. Fragmented light spots continued to drip down the javelin and fell to the ground, and then were absorbed by the octagonal cage. The arena that was like a lunar surface that had been ravaged by the professor also began to recover, and the craters began to fill up automatically after absorbing the professor's spiritual power. Smooth. The strength passed away bit by bit, and the professor's size began to slowly shrink. The fear of death kept biting his nascent consciousness. But as death got closer, the red light in his eyes became more intense, and his consciousness also became more and more intense under the stimulation of fear. He became more and more active, and images and thoughts began to flash in his mind. At the edge of the ring, Su Yu was still standing cautiously at a distance, with the javelin emerging from his hand again. Even though his opponent seemed to have lost his ability to resist, he was not prepared to take risks. The opponent's strength attribute is too high. If you can kill him from a distance, why bother with melee combat? He weighed the javelin in his hand. This thing felt good in the hand and was better than a bow and arrow at medium and short range. He planned to prepare a few more when he went out. Lunge, twist your waist, swing your arms and hands, let go. Call out. The javelin roared and once again galloped towards the large hedgehog in the center of the ring. Boom! But this time the javelin was different from the past. It did not penetrate directly into the professor's body. Instead, it seemed to have pierced a flexible rubber ball. After making a dull sound, it was bounced away far away. Then under Su Yu's surprised gaze, the pile of javelins in front began to bulge, and strange creaking noises continued to be heard. In the center of the ring, the professor's crouched body began to twist and stretch, the spirally curved horns on his forehead began to grow, thick green and black hair quickly extended from every pore, and the dense javelins on his body were squeezed out one by one, tinkling. There was a constant sound of metal clanging against the ground. As the change continued, his hands and feet began to retract and turned into animal paws, with sharp claws spread out at the front, and a long tail curled behind his hips, floating freely. Looking up, the entire head has turned into a beast, with high forehead bones, wide zygomatic arches, thick hair covering the entire cheek, long black eyebrows, a pair of tiger eyes, a wide front kiss, and a bloody mouth. Open! In the white mist, two red orbs as red as carbon suddenly appeared, like two high-hanging red lanterns, emitting an unknown and strange red light. Moo! The alien beast looked up to the sky and roared, and the howling air waves spread with the roar, immediately dispelling all the fog in the cage, and the entire arena became clear again. Bang! Before the alien beast could finish roaring, a huge warhammer came with the pressure of hunting wind and hit the alien beast's jaw hard. After a loud bang, the alien beast, which had just appeared for less than 3 seconds, flew high into the air. The strong tremor caused by Bengjin made the alien beast's entire brain buzz, and his consciousness went blank. Before it even hit the ground, there was another continuous hammer blow, and the clanging sound like a hammer resounded throughout the entire spiritual space. When it came to blacksmithing, Su Yu could fight for a whole day. Shocking tremors spread all over the body. Under the constant hammer blows, the alien beast's body became limp, its consciousness was groggy, and it was unable to even stand up. But the alien beast after the professor's transformation was indeed thick-skinned and thick-skinned. After the huge warhammer hit the skull hard, it was unable to crack the skull. This defense was indeed several times stronger than the previous human form. If it hadn't had to make a concave shape after it appeared, Su Yu probably wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it so easily and control it in one fell swoop. The violent sound of hammering in the octagonal cage lasted for a full hour. During this hour, every time a hammer was struck, a large swath of starlight would be brought out from the alien beast. Every time a piece of starlight was hammered out, the alien beast's body would shrink. 1 cent. The more Su Yu hammers, the stronger his hand feels, but the more the beasts hammer, the smaller they become. A long hour passed, and as the last hammer fell, the beast fell limply to the ground, its whole body miserable, with only half of its horns left on its head, and its fur flying everywhere. Hunter Intelligence +1. Cool. Putting the war hammer in his hand on his shoulder, Su Yueshang took a long breath and felt comfortable. Looking sideways at the strange beast on the ground that was as big as a puppy, Su Yu's eyes seemed to reveal 2 big words, "That's it?" It looks quite intimidating. I feel like I'm not as strong as before after the transformation, but my head is indeed much harder. Su Yu touched his chin and looked down at the strange beast whose hind legs were still twitching. He couldn't help but wonder. The Hulk version of the professor is essentially a ball of powerful spiritual power without an owner, which is just manifested into this image in the spiritual space. But how does this thing give birth to thinking, and can it transform? Su Yu had a vague guess in his mind, but he was not sure. As he was thinking, the strange beast lying below gradually started to move, and slowly began to wake up. Su Yu's eyes turned cold, and the war hammer in his hand turned into a square-shaped painted halberd with a wave of his hand. When the alien beast staggered up from the ground, he felt a strong wind blowing above his head. The sharp halberd sharply enlarged in his pupils, and then stopped steadily only a few inches away from his eyes. The alien beast's body froze, not daring to move at all. The confusion in his eyes quickly dissipated and turned clear. "Let me ask you one last time, what are you?" Su Yu's cold voice came from above, with no emotion at all. The alien beast cautiously took half a step back, sat down, and looked up at Su Yu above. It was clearly a beast's face, but the corners of his mouth were curved in an extremely human way. "I am you." Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, a boot came towards him. Under a whip kick from Su Yu, the alien beast instantly flew out of the air, hit the fence of the octagonal cage and hung there for a while before slowly sliding down. When he raised his head again, another cold light flashed before his eyes, and the tip of the halberd came down on his head. "If you keep pretending to be a ghost, you'll die." "I'm not lying, Su Yu, reincarnation, white knight, time travel." "That's right." After hearing the strange beast tell his biggest secret, Su Yu didn't show much surprise, but his brows furrowed deeper. The strange beast's words only verified his guess. In the spiritual space, who else could make a meaningless pure spiritual body give birth to thoughts except himself? "Then what's your situation now?" "I don't know. It was only when I was beaten to half-death by you that so many memories appeared in my mind, and they were very mixed." The alien beast stretched out its claws and scratched its furry head, but it couldn't help but tremble when it touched the broken horn. "You're quite ruthless." The alien beast glanced at the tip of the halberd that was still standing in front of him without any intention of taking it back. The corner of his eye twitched and he continued. "An independent thought. Split personality. Gluttony, the original sin of Western legend. The legendary Seven Souls Fuyao in China. It's all possible." After saying that, the strange beast looked at Su Yu, who was meditating, and quietly moved his body to avoid the sharp tip of the halberd in front of him. Chapter 30. The floating island in the spiritual space is different from the previous simple scene of only one piece of land and one room. After Su Yu's drastic transformation, it has begun to become full of life, like a small farmyard. Nowadays, the length and width of the floating island are more than 10 feet each. In addition to the forging room, a small bedroom has been added to it. Opposite the 2 rooms is a lush jujube tree. Under the canopy, a square shape can be vaguely seen. The stone table has 4 small round piers arranged in 4 directions. Su Yu was sitting on the round pier. There was a pot of tea on the square table in front of him, and the porcelain cup was filled with mist. Not far away, a strange beast the size of a puppy fell to the ground, its back leaning against the jujube tree, its little tail flapping up and down on the side. Pulling the milky white chain around its neck, the alien beast looked helpless. It raised its head and looked at Su Yu, who was meditating on the genuine tea above, with a helpless tone. "I said, there's no need for this. After all, I was split from your mind. I can be considered a clone more or less. As for being tied up like a dog, Haha, clone. Su Yuepi, who was sitting on the round pier, replied with a smile. He did not have a clone that could think independently and was not under his control. After some conversation, he roughly figured out the appearance of the strange beast. This was one of the hidden dangers of rashly absorbing an overly powerful spiritual body. Any seemingly good gift has corresponding disadvantages hidden behind it. Pure mental power that is so powerful that even oneself has difficulty absorbing it accumulates in the mind. After being exposed to the chaotic thoughts of the human body, it becomes the best breeding ground for the birth of consciousness. Especially in the previous actual combat mode, the strong emotional fluctuations caused by dying in bloody battles provided rich nourishment for the birth of this new consciousness. Finally, under the stimulation and guidance of the Daodi statue, this thing was born. It is essentially the product of the fusion of Su Yu's mixed thoughts and the professor's pure spiritual power. This is similar to the process by which sperm and eggs combine to create new life. From a certain perspective, Su Yu is its father. Of course, Su Yu will never admit this. Besides, this thing is not considered life in the strict sense. It is at most an independent thought. What it said before about the original sin of gluttony and the hidden arrows of the seven souls is just to put gold on one's face. As long as Su Yu doesn't give it a chance to grow at will, under the constraints of the spiritual barrier, it can't even leave the spiritual space, and seizing the body is nonsense, and it won't cause much trouble. After thinking about this, Su Yu's heart settled down due to the previous incident. This time he learned a lesson. He needs to be more cautious when using his talents in the future, especially when devouring powerful enemies. However, he did not intend to kill this little thing right now. This thing was of great research value and seemed to have other uses. Staring at the dejected beast below, Su Yu's eyes were a little playful. The strange beast next to the jujube tree twisted its body unnaturally, and its scalp was numb from being stared at by Su Yu. Boss, you are not planning to kill me, are you? We are from the same roots. Ignore the strange beast that is playing tricks. Although this thing comes from him, its personality is very different from his. What are your abilities? After listening to Su Yu's inquiry, the alien beast rolled its eyes in a circle, stood up from a slumped position, put all 4 feet on the ground, raised its head forward, and spoke proudly. Handsome. Su Yu said nothing, but his eyes began to narrow slightly. The body of the alien beast that was in the process of concave shape suddenly stiffened. It felt the growing chill in the eyes above, and hesitated for a moment. He actually turned his head and bit into the jujube tree behind him. His sharp teeth intertwined and a large piece of bark was torn off. The rough and hard large pieces of bark are like crispy biscuits in the mouth of the alien beast. It chewed and said vaguely. It doesn't matter if you can eat anything. After eating the bark, the hair on his body began to grow rapidly, and the mottled fur that had been hit by Su Yu with a hammer began to become shiny and smooth again. Recovering quickly through eating is a good material for a human shield. I think you can grow quickly after eating a lot, Daodi? Su Yu looked at the strange beast below that was happily stroking his fur with his claws, and silently analyzed the relevant information in his heart. After admiring itself, the strange beast sat back down by the jujube tree. It probably guessed that Su Yu had no intention of killing it yet, otherwise it wouldn't talk so much. He stretched out a claw to pick at the gap between his teeth and continued to speak. Besides, I seem to be able to induce gluttony in people's hearts, but... As it spoke, it used its paws to pull the milky white chain tightly tied around its neck. Now that I'm tied up with this thing, I can't use it to its full potential. But... In fact, these are not the point. The key point is that the appearance is handsome. Boss, the 4 ancient evils, Daodi. Don't you need a mount? I'm here to help you in times of need. As long as you keep letting me out and find me a body, I will have a mighty and domineering mount. My appearance is no better than that of a wolf dog. Haha, something like that is strong. The alien beast spoke louder and louder, and later even stood up and started spinning around, intending to show Su Yu his majestic and heroic appearance from 360 degrees without blind spots. Combined with the swelling on its face that has not subsided and the pair of broken horns on its head, it looks quite funny. However, this guy's strong desire to survive was clearly revealed in the display just now. Hat. After Su Yu looked the alien beast up and down, he let out a chuckle with unknown meaning. He did not have the slightest intention to respond to the self-promotional display of the alien beast. The 4 evil beasts in ancient times were all evil beasts. Hun Chao is the son of Emperor Hong's family. He conceals his righteousness and hides as a thief. He likes to do evil things. He refers to a person who does not distinguish between right and wrong. Zhuangzi's son, Yangzhu, is proud, ruthless and virtuous, and refers to a stubborn and unyielding person. Qianqi is the son of the Xiahao family. He destroys trust and loyalty, advocates evil words, and refers to those who are treacherous. Daodi is the son of the Jinyun family. He accumulates wealth and does not know the rules. It refers to a greedy and immoderate person. These four are all concrete products of the evil of human nature. No matter how much this strange beast is related to Daodi, its nature is by no means as funny and harmless as it appears now. The current posture is just to survive. Su Yu was not naive enough to think that he would be able to get a high-quality mount from a fight. The scene when this strange beast was not yet fully awakened, complaining about hunger while rushing towards him, was still vivid in his mind. "Boss, what are you thinking about?" Seeing that Su Yu didn't reply for a long time, Ye Xiao couldn't help but feel a little uneasy and asked with a flattering face. "Let's see, you stay here honestly for now, and I'll see how you behave later." Su Yu did not clearly say whether he agreed or refused. He could not relax his control over this gluttonous beast until he found a way to absolutely restrain it. Now that the matters here have been initially dealt with, it's time for him to go back to his exclusive room and have a good night's rest. He has been running around almost all the time from entering the park to now. Before leaving, he glanced at a hole in the jujube tree caused by missing bark, and he couldn't help but pause. "No gnawing. If I find anything missing on the floating island when I come back, you know the consequences." Daodi sat upright, his eyes wide open, and he nodded obediently. After turning into a cub, it was not as ferocious as before. Even the long and narrow red eyes before had now become dark and round. Su Yu stared at its seemingly innocent eyes without comment, then disappeared after giving a warning. The entire spiritual space became dead again, with only one tree and one beast showing some signs of life. After a long time, a whisper came from under the jujube tree. Chapter 31. In the bedroom of his exclusive space, Su Yu slowly woke up from a large bed. He slept for about 10 hours and felt refreshed when he woke up. After he left the spiritual space yesterday, he visited several furniture stores non-stop. After some comparison, he used 100 paradise coins to pack a daily household bucket. Returning to the exclusive room, I spent 200 paradise coins to expand the bedroom and bathroom. After some tidying up, I fell asleep. Although it was a bit troublesome, it was worth it, but he was not very interested in sleeping on the floor, but living in this city, the demand for paradise coins was really endless. Just simply arranging the room cost him 300 paradise coins. This was despite Su Yu's low requirements. Fortunately, the paradise coins in his hand were still sufficient. According to Xiu, ordinary contractors who only get about 2,000 paradise coins from one mission can imagine the hardship in their lives. After getting up, he simply washed up and ate some convenient breakfast prepared in the space. Su Yu opened the door and walked towards the trading square. He needs to buy a lot of things now. I hope he will be lucky today. There are still 10,558 points left. It should be enough, right? As soon as we stepped into Tongdian Mao Square, the noisy sound waves hit our faces. As one of the three major trading markets in the park, it handles more than 10,000 passengers every day. There is an endless stream of merchants coming and going, and there is a clamor of people selling and bargaining. The white 7-point sword only costs 800 points. It's high quality and low priced. If you're quick, you can't get it if you're slow. Golden AK, green quality, strong attack, handsome appearance, practical and beautiful at the same time. You want 5,000 for the tower shield at 18 o'clock, so you're stealing money, right? My strong man, you can't say that. Look at the solid thickness of my tower shield. The materials alone are not cheap. Only such a tower shield can match your tall and majestic figure, right? Go away, 4,000, if you like it, you can sell it or not. After wandering around the trading market for more than half an hour, Su Yu realized that he might have overestimated the purchasing power of Paradise Coin. A little more than 10,000 yuan of Paradise Coins can be used in daily life, which is a huge sum of money, but it can be used to purchase equipment and skills, which is completely insufficient. In the trading market, the price of white equipment with a slightly higher score is around 1,000. The price of green-grade equipment, which is slightly better and can catch Su Yu's attention, is at least 3,000 Paradise Coins. As for blue equipment, 10,000 points is just an admission ticket. Just the 2 pieces of green equipment Su Yu made before, Xiaoyun Bao and mountain shaking arm armor, could easily be sold for more than 8,000 paradise coins if thrown into this trading market. Looking at it this way, in addition to helping a lot in improving his strength, his talent is also very effective when used to earn resources. There is still a lot of fire in the body, which is more than enough to at least strengthen the 2 existing pieces of equipment. Su Yu does not have a large demand for weapons at this stage. What he needs is some equipment or skills with special effects. For example, this one. In a gypsy-style stall, there were 7 or 8 strange items of various sizes placed on a somewhat shabby canvas. What Su Yu took a fancy to was one of the small black round mirrors that exuded a faint glow. Divination mirror. Place of origin, Reincarnation Paradise, Mystery House. Quality, green. Type, special. Effect, positioning divination. After dripping the target's blood, the target can be located by consuming mana. Tip, each divination consumes 10 mana points. Tip, the divination range is 20 kilometers. Rating, 17, note, the rating of green equipment ranges from 11 to 30. Green equipment with a rating of 30 will be marked rare and have special attributes attached. Introduction, Magic Mirror, please tell me the location of this person. Guest, this magic mirror costs 5,000 points, no bargaining. A charming female voice came from behind the stall. The stall owner was wearing a hijab. Although he couldn't see the whole picture, his charming fox eyes were very seductive. Facing the stall owner's tender eyes, Su Yu remained unmoved and spoke calmly. Expensive. Guest. Expensive. The stall owner was about to speak, but he saw a faint purple light filling Su Yu's eyes. After his breath was slightly suffocated, he took out a card and placed it in front of Su Yu. He smiled sweetly again and said, "Then let me give you another gift." Su Yu looked at the blank tarot card in front of him and clicked on the introduction. Tarot of Destiny, rare. Place of origin, Reincarnation Paradise, Mystery House. Quality, white. Type, special. Effect, when you have trouble making a decision, open it and fate will tell you the answer. Tips, the current number of uses is 3/3. Rating, 10, note, the rating of white equipment is from 1 to 10. White equipment with a rating of 10 will be marked as rare and have special attributes attached. Introduction, we are just pointing the way, not determining the future. Make a deal. The magic mirror is preparing for the subsequent hunting mission. He is good at killing people, but not very good at hunting. He has to prepare in advance. If the hunting mission fails, the punishment in the paradise will not be easy. As for tarot cards, this special item may be of great use at a critical moment, so you won't lose money if you get it. After leaving the gypsy stall, Su Yu stopped wandering around the square. Although he bought 2 items, he was not in a good mood. The paradise points cost more than he thought. Half of them have been removed now, after deducting the subsequent daily necessities and the cost of purchasing recovery products. All he has at his disposal is about 3,000 paradise coins, which cannot even be used to make a splash in the trading market. Therefore, I don't plan to stay in the market any longer. If I find the right one but don't have enough paradise coins, I will simply make myself unhappy. He took out the navigation on his tablet and looked at it, then turned to the direction of Forging Street. He needed a lot of high-quality ore now. Unlike the hustle and bustle of Tongtian Hall and the food court, Forging Street seems much lonely. This is where foundry workers gather. In addition to the need for repairs and customized equipment, few contractors will come here. There is no shop specifically responsible for selling equipment. The equipment forged by employees will also be sold in the trading market. After walking around the blacksmithing street, most of the shops didn't even have anyone greeting them in front of the door. It can be seen that most of the workers who rely on blacksmithing craftsmanship are quite Buddhist. What they need is to continuously improve their skills rather than recruit them. In business, in Samsara Paradise, equipment is a hard currency, and their demand for paradise coins is not so urgent. After roughly understanding the situation, Su Yu found a shop selling raw materials. After some bargaining, he purchased more than 2,000 points of green steel before leaving with satisfaction. With these steel materials, he can completely improve the quality of the equipment in his hands to another level. But before that, he had to complete a transaction. The elementary mechanical modification scroll that had been hanging in the unmanned sales area of the trading market for a day finally received a reliable buyer. In the messages and emails sent to him before, except for threats. Even those who were willing to trade sincerely chose to exchange them with paradise coins or weapons and equipment. Knowledge skills were more scarce than he imagined. The buyer who sent the email in front of him was the only one who chose to exchange knowledge and skills of the same level, and Su Yu was very interested in this knowledge. Elementary enchantment. Origin, off a continent. Quality, second level scroll. Knowledge skill scrolls are divided into levels 1 to 9. Category, skill scroll. Effect of use, after use, you can master primary enchantment. Requirements for use, physical strength 6 points, intelligence 8 points. Chapter 32. Summer Tea Shop. Compared to the hustle and bustle of the trading market next door, the atmosphere here is always peaceful and peaceful. The crowd of people in twos and threes was sparse and scattered, and a faint elven aria was sung quietly. In the corner of the shop, near the window, a man and a woman were sitting opposite each other, with 2 cups of green tea on the table. Ha, the atmosphere in this place is rare. The taste is good. The speaker was the buyer who was invited to the tea shop by Su Yu for a transaction. He was currently looking around at the exotic plants in the shop and clicking his tongue. There are really not many small shops with such a peaceful atmosphere in the park. For the purpose of attracting attention, most shops pursue either excitement or luxury. After looking around the store excitedly, the girl then remembered that the purpose of her visit was to trade, not to explore the store. After adjusting her sitting posture a little, she looked at Su Yu opposite and said, "My name is Yiling, what is the name of this seller?" "Fire Fire." "Hey, the fire is endless, what a good name." Su Yu looked at the thumbs-up gesture of the girl in front of him, and the corners of his mouth froze slightly. He felt that the girl in front of him might be a bit of a tiger. "No more gossip, let's just trade." After saying that, Su Yu took out the primary mechanical modification scroll and placed it in front of Yiling. "No problem." Yiling also took out a black scroll, but did not hand it to Su Yu in a hurry, but said, "Before the transaction, I would like to remind you. Enchanting is a very expensive thing. Once the transaction is completed, we will clear the money and goods. We are not responsible for the after-sales service." Looking at the enchantment scroll that Yiling took out, Su Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. He had probably heard of enchantment, which was a technique for adding status to equipment, but he didn't understand the specific operation method. "Tell me more specifically." "Okay, let's just treat it as a product introduction. Enchanter is a skill that applies a permanent enhancement effect to weapons, protective gear, and other equipment. The effect is very powerful, but enchantment requires the use of a very special type of raw material, and this raw material can only be obtained by disassembling the equipment. So, the cost of enchanting is astonishing. To strengthen a piece of equipment, the most basic requirement is to decompose an equipment of the same quality, or even several pieces of equipment of the same quality. The difference depends on the level of your enchanting skills and the level of the equipment. The strength of the enchantment effect has been realized. In short, the improvement of enchanting skills requires the consumption of countless equipment. If you want to develop this skill, it is best to learn another blacksmithing skill. Or maybe you have enough paradise coins." Yiling explained it in detail. It took a long time for her to acquire this knowledge and skill, but considering the resources required to develop enchantment, she just didn't dare to learn it. As for learning another blacksmithing skill and developing it together with enchantment, Yiling had never considered it at all. Not to mention the scarcity of blacksmithing knowledge and skills, she could not afford the time it would take to develop 2 skills from scratch at the same time. This will seriously slow down her growth rate, and in the paradise, falling behind is equivalent to slow death. Even if the later effects of enchantment are very powerful, she still has to survive until that time. Compared with enchantment, mechanical transformation is very good, it takes shape quickly, has a significant improvement in combat power, consumes relatively few resources, and the late-stage potential of the mechanical system is also not small. This is why Yiling is willing to tell the seller so much and even take the initiative to expose the flaws in enchantment. In her opinion, this transaction is a small advantage for her. If Su Yu finds that after the transaction is completed, he finds that he has traded into a sinkhole career, it would be a bad idea to choose to chase her all over the world. This kind of thing is not uncommon in paradise. Her specialty is not fighting, and the person opposite is not easy to deal with. Spiritual vision. Skill effect, insight into barriers, detailed understanding. Due to the special skills of her profession, she could see some deeper things, and when she looked at Su Yu, what she saw was a purple sea of fire. It was a feeling as if the whole world was being swallowed by flames, which made people shudder. Su Yu frowned slightly. The fire in his body fluctuated suddenly for a moment, but then calmed down quickly. Is her? Su Yu turned his attention to Yiling, who was drinking tea after explaining, but when he saw her eyes glowing after taking a sip of green shade and biting the straw, he was not sure. That's it, are you sure you want to trade? After drinking half the cup in one breath, Yiling raised her head and asked. Although she was a little bit hairy from being stared at just now, her face was still full of smiles. No problem, let's deal. After taking the scroll handed over by Yiling, Su Yu looked at her deeply, turned around and left the tea shop. It doesn't matter whether the strangeness just now was caused by her. There are all kinds of strange abilities in the park. So far, he has not felt any malice from Yiling. If the other party really has any dangerous thoughts towards him, the worst he can do is meet him in the derivative world. Just do it once when you get there. Purple fire is interesting. In the tea shop behind him, Yiling was gently stroking the black and white SLR camera that was always hanging on his chest, while looking at Su Yu's farther and farther back through the glass near the window, with an interesting smile on his lips. It seems to be a very good material. In the exclusive space, Su Yu was playing with the black scroll in his hand and was in a good mood. Although he didn't get the blacksmithing knowledge he wanted most, the enchantment science was quite to his liking. As for the huge cost issue mentioned by Yiling before, although his paradise coins are not abundant, with his talent and ability to make equipment quickly, it should be enough to meet the needs of enchantment. Hope it can give me a surprise. Yes/no to use enchantment, elementary. After using it, you will open the sub-professional, enchanter. This profession will not have any impact on the hunter's appearance or bloodline. Haha, I haven't obtained a serious career yet, but I have started a sub-career first. After sighing, Su Yu clicked OK. The next moment, the scroll in his hand shattered, and with a violent roar, he seemed to see the whole world disintegrating, so things turned into powder, and endless spots of light of various colors were separated. The science of enchantment originally originated from the exploration of the material world by mages. They sorted out and summarized the characteristics of many things, such as the heat of fire, the coldness of ice, the sharpness of swords, and the toughness of shields. They discovered that all things in the world, whether naturally occurring or artificially created, will have their corresponding characteristics. Thus, ambition was born. If a being has the characteristics of everything in the world, what is the difference between him and God? The mages created the decomposition technique to extract the characteristics of all things, and then combined it with the human body, but the fragile body simply cannot withstand the conflict of many characteristics gathered together. Since then, the vigorous plan to create gods has failed, but the science of enchantment has been born. Since the body cannot bear it, the next best thing is to use artifacts. They decompose, extract, then fuse, and bless, they destroy, then create, they unite into one, turning decay into magic. Tip: after you master the science of enchantment, some magic camps in the derivative world will give priority to recruiting you. If the science of enchantment reaches a high level, it is very likely that large forces in the derivative world will kidnap you. The system's beeps kept ringing, but Su Yu had no time to pay attention. The properties of countless materials began to swirl in his mind. This is the basis of enchantment, understanding the characteristics of all things, and then using them for your own use. It took a long time for Su Yu to recover from the pain of having knowledge forced into his mind. Even if it is just a basic level of enchantment, it contains a lot of various materials and corresponding techniques. However, he can only master a small part of this knowledge now. More content requires him to continue to practice and improve. The science of enchantment is more exciting than I imagined. Su Yu took out the first piece of white equipment he obtained in the previous world, a hunting spear gun, and placed it in front of him and covered it with both hands. A grey-white cyclone began to emerge in the palm of his hand, encompassing all the spear guns, accompanied by a subtle clicking sound. After a moment, the spear gun turned into dust scattered on the ground, and two small piles of white light particles appeared in Su Yu's hand. You get magic dust, white, ×2. Chapter 33. In the exclusive room, Su Yu looked at the magic dust in his hand with great interest. This thing is the most basic raw material for enchanting. It serves as a buffer that combines equipment and characteristics. Without it, enchanting cannot be carried out at all. The more powerful the enchanting effect, the more magic dust is required. Enchanting is worthy of being said to be a big waste of money. One enchantment consumes at least one pile of magic dust. The maximum number of magic dust that can be decomposed from a piece of white equipment is only 5 piles. The specific amount depends on the quality of the equipment and the level of enchantment. Decide. Putting the magic dust in his hand aside, Su Yu opened the skill list. On top of the list, an independent sub-professional list was indeed listed. After clicking on it, a skill tree from top to bottom suddenly appeared. Enchanting, Elementary. The first level, Equipment Characteristic Enchantment LV1, Proficiency 0/10. 1. Manufacturing of sturdy enchanted scrolls. Each production requires 20 mana points magic dust, diamond, orichalcum, and parchment. The second level, Equipment Attribute Enchantment, not unlocked. Unlocking requires reaching LV10 on the first level. The third level, Equipment Special Enchantment, not unlocked. Unlocking requires reaching LV10 on the second level. The content of elementary enchantment has reached the upper limit. There are only 3 levels of enchanting content that can be opened in the elementary enchantment science, which are also the 3 most basic introductory items of enchantment. Only after you have mastered them all can you fully enter the door of enchantment and you can call yourself an enchanter. Characteristic blessings are used to improve the sturdiness, sharpness, dexterity, and other characteristics of the equipment itself. Attribute blessing is the energy added to the equipment that can improve the holder's own attributes, such as strength, body, agility, etc. Special blessing is to give the equipment special attributes that are not its own, such as burning, frost, etc. All 3 abilities are quite strong, and the prospects are very bright, but Su Yu can only learn to make the first one now, and the following content requires him to continuously improve his proficiency. Looking at the materials required for the first recipe, although I only have magic dust on hand, it is not a big problem. In the paradise, except for the magic dust, which must be provided by myself, the other materials can be replaced with paradise coins. Picking up the magic dust, Su Yu started trying to make it, and the paradise prompt sounded. Insufficient materials, yes/no, pay 50 paradise coins to replace the required materials. Clicking to confirm, dots of light of various colors appeared in Su Yu's hands. Under his continuous operation, they gradually merged with the magic dust, and finally melted into a ball of white light and penetrated into a piece of unfolded parchment. It took 1 minute and the scroll was completed. Sturdy Enchantment Scroll. Quality, white. Effect, you can consume 10 mana points to enchant the target equipment. The enchantment effect is solid +1. Tip, the same enchantment effects cannot be superimposed. Rating, 5. Note, white items are rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Price, 100 paradise coins. Throwing the scroll in his hand, Su Yu was very satisfied. The 1 point of solidity bonus may not seem like much, but the blessing to the equipment is not small. Some relatively fragile equipment, such as accessories, clothing, etc. After adding 1 point of solidity, the defense durability is almost doubled. It is not a problem to buy this thing in the trading market for 400 points. And now it is just the most basic enchanting formula. As the proficiency is upgraded, more advanced formulas will be unlocked continuously. This resource consumption is indeed a bit scary. 1 scroll only improves the proficiency a little. Even if a piece of white equipment can decompose 3 piles of magic dust, at least 3 pieces of equipment will be consumed to upgrade to a level. If you want to upgrade to at full level, I don't know how much equipment I will consume. But this is not too troublesome for Su Yu. As long as he kills enough people and has enough fire, forging white equipment is very convenient for him, and enchantment can also be improved quickly. This makes him look forward to the next step more and more. A derivative world. Licking his lips, Su Yu picked up another pile of magic dust and started making it. After a moment, Su Yu held 2 enchantment scrolls and patted them on his clothes, and a white light flashed. Ordinary clothing. Place of origin, Samsara Paradise, Xinhuo. Quality, white. Category, tops. Durability, 20/20ths. Equipment requirements, none. Equipment effect, tough, solid +1. Rating, 3. Introduction, 1 minute ago, you were indifferent to me, the next minute, I made you unable to reach your heights. Price, 200 paradise coins. Su Yuexi brought 2 pieces of white equipment. Although the effect of the equipment was to improve the toughness of the clothes, he was already very satisfied. At least the embarrassing scene of wearing clothes and losing them would not happen so easily in the future. As for whether using the scroll on ordinary clothes would be too luxurious, he doesn't really care. Anyway, the scroll can be remade at any time. Good quality clothing and armor on the market are quite expensive, and he can't afford it now. This set will be regarded as a transition first. After understanding the effects of enchantment, Su Yu temporarily put it behind him. The best time to improve enchantment is to wait until a large amount of low-quality fire is obtained in the next world. There is no rush for the time being. What is more important for him now is to continue to improve his strength. He still has a lot of high-quality fire ignited by the Professor and X-24 in his body. These are the qualifications for him to strengthen again. I took out the green quality steel I purchased at Forge Street. Although this material is not as good as adamant metal, its quality is far superior to ordinary alloy steel. Fire pattern steel. Quality, green. Type, rare ore. Introduction, it is extracted from ores that grow deep in volcanoes. It is strong and hard and contains weak fire energy. I wonder if swallowing a large amount of this thing can gain the ability to control fire. Although the fire is powerful, it cannot be used in combat after all. With a flash of hope in his heart, Su Yu stretched out his hand to summon a large fire, and the strengthening began. Hunter's Life plus 18, Fire Resistance plus 6. The boiling fire burned for 2 hours before it began to subside. Su Yu used up almost all the fire. Except for the remaining spare parts, part of it was used to strengthen himself and the other part was used to strengthen equipment. After the strengthening was completed, the delusion of hoping to improve the ability to obtain fire through fire pattern ore was broken, but the improvement in fire resistance was also considered a consolation prize. The attributes have not been improved, but this is not an accident. The further you go, the higher the quality requirements for fire and steel required to improve attributes. What brings him the biggest surprise now is the progress in body metallization. Affiliated skill of talent, metallization, special. Skill effect, digesting physical strength can achieve metallization of the body. The current metallization process is, skin, 100%, flesh and blood, 2%. The complete metallization of the skin brings not only comprehensive body defense without dead spots, but also more changes. Su Yu stood in the center of the room, spreading his hands flat on his chest. As his thoughts moved, he saw the nails at his fingertips quickly lengthening, and the silver fingertips shone with a cold light, turning into a pair of sharp teeth. Claw. When he tapped his hands lightly, sparks flashed. This was very similar to the ability of Wolverine's brother Saber-Toothed Tiger, but Su Yu's ability was more than that. After her nails changed, her hair also grew longer, turning into silver threads on her shawl. Call out! There was a sound of breaking through the air, the scream coming from the silver thorns formed by the entwined hair piercing the air. Yes, there are more means. These two abilities, similar to the saber-toothed tiger's claws and Jiraiya's hair-like ninjutsu, are essentially Su Yu's greatly enhanced ability to manipulate body tissue after the skin is completely metallized. Now he is looking forward to how far his body can be completely metallized, like the T-1000 in the Terminator, which is completely deformed. Taking back his changed nails and hair, he opened the door to the exclusive room and walked towards the trial ground. Now he needed to adapt to his new method as soon as possible. In the next day and a half, Su Yu went back and forth between the trial ground and the exclusive room, trying to maximize his strength in the remaining time. Chapter 34. In a daze, the 3-day period in the paradise has passed in an instant. At the sound of the system's prompt, Su Yu reluctantly returned to the real world. The hunters are about to return to the real world, please remember the regulations of the Reincarnation Paradise. Do not reveal anything about the Reincarnation Paradise in the real world in any way, otherwise you will be given a warning. If the warning is ineffective, the hunter will be forcibly executed. Hunters cannot use the abilities obtained in the Reincarnation Paradise in real life, except for personal attributes and passive skills. Most of the equipment or items obtained in Samsara Paradise cannot be taken out in the real world and are in a locked state. They will be restored after returning to Samsara Paradise. Transmission begins. Location, real world. The night is dark and the crows weep. In a desolate woodland, sparse graves are scattered in 2s and 3s, and from time to time, a few plaintive cries can be heard from the surrounding dark and dense forest. The cold moonlight passed through the layers of twisted branches and fell on a low grave. From the scattered grass roots and moist new soil above, it could be seen that this was a new resident who had just arrived at the mass grave. The rustling sound of digging earth kept coming from behind the grave, breaking the silence of this sleeping place and adding a bit of eeriness to the cold atmosphere. Looking towards the source of the sound according to the pale light cast by the moonlight, I saw an old dog with mottled fur digging hard into the soil behind the newly erected grave. Half of it was covered with yellow-brown soil. This body makes the old dog look ugly and dirty. But his own image was obviously not in the old dog's consideration. Its scarlet eyes stared greedily at the deeper and deeper hole in front of him, and its sensitive nose had already allowed him to smell the fragrance of flesh and blood. Thick saliva is constantly secreted in the mouth, overflowing and dripping from the corners of the mouth, and strands are stuck on the hair. It doesn't know what a mass grave is, but it knows that this place will make him dry and barren every once in a while. The stomach is full for several days. Suddenly, the grave in front of him seemed to move, and a few grains of soil fell down. The old dog was startled, stopped digging for food, and retreated carefully with a whimper. Under the moonlight, a big hand with distinct joints burst out of the ground. Bai Sensen looked like a ghost, and the big hand slowly clenched into a fist and shook lightly. There was a muffled sound, and the grave exploded, releasing large pieces of gravel and soil. The old dog beside him was hit and howled repeatedly. "Where is this?" Su Yu stood up from the grave, shook off the dust from his body, and looked around. It was desolate and deserted. The mass grave west of the ring. After scanning around, Su Yu also understood the environment he was in. Although he had never been to this place, he had heard from the staff in the boxing ring that if no one collected the bodies of boxers who were killed in the ring, they would be killed. Being left here. The boxing ring is not located in the territory of China. In this wild and chaotic area, no one cares about what is buried in these mass graves. After figuring out the location, Su Yu, who was looking for a path in the dim moonlight, suddenly felt a slight tingling sensation in his lower body, which was a warning from the beast's intuition. Looking down, two scarlet lights suddenly lit up in the thick darkness, and an old dog jumped out, its big salivating mouth opened, and its sharp teeth came from Su Yu's lower body. Bang! He whipped his leg out, and the old dog fell heavily to the ground. His whole body was twisted, and blood gurgled from his mouth. The old dog whimpered a few times and tried to get up, but found that he couldn't feel his arms and legs. Its spine had been smashed into several pieces. Dog! Su Yu picked up a piece of gravel from the ground and exerted force on his wrist. The stone was like a locust. Then he turned around and left. He wanted to kill more than one dog today. Behind him, a watermelon seemed to have exploded on the ground, with red pulp and white liquid everywhere. In a small manor on the outskirts of the city, it was brightly lit but silent. The whole manor was eerily silent. Click! This was the sound of a broken neck. Su Yu threw the corpse in his hand casually. Under the cold moonlight, 7 or 8 limp corpses were piled up around the manor. 12 points of agility is like a ghost to these ordinary people. Walking to the atrium gate in the manor, the heavy door was tightly closed. Su Yu put his palm close to the door lock. With a strong shake in his hand, the delicate door lock instantly turned into a pile of broken parts. The door was opened lightly, and as soon as Su Yu appeared, a tongue of fire rushed towards his face. As he had expected, he exerted force on his calves and jumped sideways, while a black shadow flew out of his hand. The din of gunfire died down and turned into a howl. He looked at the man in the room who was holding his bloody right hand and screaming with indifference. There was a gun that was broken into 2 pieces scattered beside the man. You are not dead, right? Su Yu added the second half of the sentence for the stuttering man opposite. Then he grabbed the man's neck with his right hand and lifted him up from the ground. Wait! I have. The man struggled to speak. Don't be afraid, it will be soon. Click. 1 day later, somewhere in a dark room. Where to go? China requires a complete set of identities. Okay, 200,000. Good. 3 days later. Su Yu looked at the sparkling lake in front of him. The bright sunshine cast thousands of golden spots, and several waterbirds soared and fluttered in the distance. The environment is good, that's all. 4 days later. Boss, your store is quite interesting. Haha, come in and take a look. The young man walked into this quaint little shop and after looking around, he couldn't help but marvel. Good guy, you have all the swords, guns, swords, halberds, axes, hooks and forks, boss. You look like a real guy. He has all 18 kinds of weapons. It's a real punishment. Homemade craftsmanship, without kaifeng, is considered a handicraft. The young man ran his hand over a halberd on the weapon rack and wanted to pick it up to try, but found that the weight of the halberd was far beyond his imagination. It only moved slightly under the exertion of force. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at the shopkeeper on the side. "Boss, how much does your halberd weigh?" The shopkeeper, who was sitting idle on the armchair aside, glanced at the weapon rack pointed by the young man and said lazily, "The whole 40 kilograms, let's look at other things." "Tisk, 40 kilograms, who can dance with this thing?" The young man reluctantly walked around the mighty and domineering halberd, finally chose a Tang Heng Dao, paid and left. After the young man left, the lazy store manager got up, closed the store door, and walked to the backyard. "If you have nothing to do, let's go forge." Soon after, the sound of hammers began to resound in the backyard, lasting for a while and then suddenly stopping. "Hey, a new derivative world is about to open, and the hunters will return to the reincarnation paradise. Please make sure there are no witnesses around you." The store manager put away the hammer in his hand. He had been looking forward to it for a long time. Transmitting. Transmission completed. Su Yu felt unconscious and his ears were buzzing. When everything recovered, he had returned to his exclusive room. Looking at the familiar room, the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. The new derivative world represented more firewood waving to him, and he couldn't wait any longer. There is also the first hunting mission that is about to start. After staying in the real world for a long time, I always feel a little itchy. Paradise, what is the next derivative world? Hunter level, LV2, you can receive a notification 10 minutes before entering the derived world. The hunter will enter the derived world in 1 hour. Please wait patiently. Okay, let's keep some expectations. There was still enough time now, so Su Yu opened the door and walked to the trading market. Before that, he had to buy some recovery items. The paradise coins he had left behind were reserved for this time. Chapter 35. The exchange square became more lively, with a large number of people passing through various stalls. Compared with the previous stalls, which were mostly selling various equipment, now there are many more recovery products of various types. After shopping for a few minutes, Su Yu stopped at a stall. Most of the recovery products in this stall were small and small. Crispy chicken nuggets. Place of origin, Samsara Paradise, Shenzi Food Shop. Quality, white. Type, restoration. Effect, after consumption, 15% of health can be slowly restored. Rating, 4, note, white items are rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Introduction, delicious and healthy, it can also restore blood. Why don't you have a piece? Beggar's chicken. Place of origin, Divine Chef Zio Fugui. Quality, white. Type, restoration. Effect, after consumption, 50% of health can be slowly restored. This item takes a long time to consume, and the health value will be restored according to the amount of consumption, with a minimum value of 1% and a maximum value of 50%. Rating, 6, note, white items are rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Introduction, each bite contains not only the aroma of meat, but also the taste of active life. Resuscitation potion. Place of origin, Samsara Paradise, Life Pharmacy. Quality, white. Type, restoration. Effect, after consumption, 15% of health can be quickly restored. Rating, 6, note, white items are rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Introduction, the medicine is endless, and life is endless. Among various recovery products, most of the effects of food are slow recovery, which is more suitable for use when recovering from injuries after a battle. Potion-type recovery products can quickly replenish blood volume. These items are suitable for battery life during combat. Both have their own merits, and it's best to supplement a portion of each before entering the world. How can I buy these 3 items? The stall owner behind the stall said with a smile. Every time the derivative world opens, it is an opportunity for workers like them to make a lot of money. Recovery products are a necessity. Chicken nuggets 120 paradise coins, beggar chicken 220 paradise coins, life potion 800 paradise coins, chinjui 1150. Su Yu still has 2670 paradise coin points in his hand, which is enough. At least buying these recovery items won't be a problem. It's a little more expensive. 4 chicken nuggets, 3 beggar's chickens, and 1 life potion. A total of 1,800. How about it? The stall owner thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. At this price, he could still make a lot of money, and not many people bought such a large amount at one time. Okay, let's just make a friend. I'll call you a diner. If you come to visit more often, I'll basically set up a stall here. Okay, let's go. After paying the money, Su Yu said hello and turned to leave. Good luck to you, friend. The diner's high voice came from behind. Su Yu did not look back, but waved his hand back. See you in the next derivative world. Not long after leaving the stall, Su Yu, who was still wandering around, stopped. Hunter will enter the derivative world, Dragon Nest in 10 minutes. When the beep fell, the surrounding atmosphere was quiet for a moment, and then quickly boiled into excitement. Although it is a unified transmission, each contractor or employee goes to a different world, and the mission notification before each derivative world is like opening a blind box. Those who encounter a simple world will naturally be happy, while those who encounter a high-risk world will cry and cry. This is a drama that must be played every time before the world opens. Gan, how could it be such a bad place as the god of death? This was an angry curse. The world is destroyed by ghosts. Workers are asking for 2,000 paradise coins. This is what the workers are asking for protection. Their strength is basically dispensable, but they earn a lot of money through Paradise City. It is a big deal to exchange resources for protection. The way of survival for some workers. A temporary group has been formed in Naruto World, Master Tantan has priority. A loud shout came from behind. The sound made people wonder if this guy had practiced the lion's roar kung fu. Su Yu patted his ears and turned around to look. The speaker from behind was a tall and proud man who was almost 2 meters tall. He was still shouting at the top of his lungs. After seeing that many people around him started to look at him unkindly, he gradually lowered his voice. When facing a more dangerous world, individual contractors who do not have a formal team will form temporary adventure groups to join each other for warmth. Of course, compared to a formal adventure group with team skills and various guarantees, this kind of temporary group can be called a 3-no product, but it is still bound by the contract of the park, and there will be more or less worries when the team turns against each other, which is better than oral agreement. Amidst all the noise, 10 minutes passed quickly. The time is up, the derivative world, Dragon Nest is opened. There are no abnormalities in this world, the spatial coordinates are stable, and it consumes 0.015 ounces of space-time power. Based on the power of time and space consumed, the minimum comprehensive evaluation of the contractor in this world must reach D level. When the beep ends, a familiar sense of crisis comes from the back of your head. This is a unique teleportation method in the park. It is similar to knocking you out with a stick and then starting the teleportation. The method is quite rough. Su Yu reflexively turned the back of his head to silver. This was completely an instinctive reaction trained in the actual combat mode of the proving ground. The teleportation in space paused, and then suddenly intensified, and the sense of crisis in the back of Su Yu's head suddenly soared. His breathing was stagnant, but he had no time to react. Dang! The majestic sound like the bells of an ancient temple spread throughout the surroundings, and the contractors who had not yet been teleported all around paid attention, dumbfounded as they watched the silver figure disappear in front of them. Niobe! His brain was buzzing, and waves of numbness came from the back of his head. After shaking his head hard, Su Yu shook away the snowflakes in his eyes and regained consciousness. His attempt to die just now was completely an instinctive reaction. After regaining consciousness, the numbness in the back of his head was quickly dissipating, and a thick and sweet smell began to flow into his nasal cavity. Su Yu covered his head and looked forward, his eyes suddenly shrank. I saw dense rows of soldiers all around, all wearing armor and holding spears. Looking forward through the dense forest of spears, I saw a black tide of monsters in the distance. Monsters of large and small sizes were mixed together. The shape is scattered, but the huge number brings great intimidation. Sharp screams kept coming from the direction of the monster tide. This came from the largest group of elves in the monster tide. They were more like a combination of goblins and kobolds. They were short in stature but had a ferocious face. Its huge mouth, with yellowish saliva constantly overflowing from the gaps between its jagged teeth, its small eyes staring greedily at the human army ahead. In their impression, humans are the best food after elves. As long as you open the iron can, you can taste the freshest flesh and blood. On the tawny plain, the noisy waves of monsters and the solemn human army faced each other. The fierce wind swept across the plain, sweeping away the evil spirit that filled the sky. Enter the world, Dragon Nest. World difficulty, LV6. Difficulty, this world has entered a large number of contractors. Source of the world, 0%, the hunter's exploration or communication with the characters in the current world will increase. When settling the world, it will be calculated with the task difficulty to form the final score. Introduction to the world. On the ancient continent of Altria, humans, elves, monsters, and black dragons each occupied their own side. Decades ago, the black dragon led an army of monsters in an attempt to annex the continent. Humans and elves joined forces at the critical moment to crush the black dragon's ambitions and were defeated. The black dragon fell into a deep sleep deep in the dark valley, but the peace was short-lived. After the black dragon's defeat, humans and elves fell into an endless war for territory. Humanity was also divided because of the battle between priests and magicians, but as everyone knows, a greater crisis is brewing. The black dragon in the dark valley is about to awaken, and a wave of terrifying monsters is about to sweep across the entire continent again. Main mission, obtain the dragon jewel. Hunting mission, clean up the violator contractor No. 14,673. When the hunter enters within 1 kilometer of contractor No. 14,673, the hunting function will automatically turn on. Warning, please do not mention anything about paradise in this world. If the warning is invalid, you will be forcibly executed. Tip, it is detected that the hunter does not master the language of this world. You can automatically master the language of this world by spending 100 paradise coins. World, begin. Chapter 36. Why is it that we are on the battlefield at the beginning? Is paradise crazy? It will die, it will die. It's too outrageous. How can it be thrown into the meat grinder as soon as it comes? The paradise's prompt tone ended, and the surrounding contractors immediately started shouting after figuring out the situation, looking at the ferocious monsters in front of them with eyes full of fear. Although none of them have experienced war, they obviously understand what a meat grinder the battlefield is. Su Yu ignored the noisy crowd and began to silently observe the group of monsters on the opposite side. Now that something had happened, crying was meaningless. The only thing he could do was to survive with all his strength. Although the number of monsters on the opposite side is huge, the number of soldiers on the human camp is also large. As long as the numerical difference does not reach the point of crushing, it is not a desperate situation and there is a fight. Moreover, the soldiers holding spears around them looked at the monsters on the opposite side with hatred rather than fear. There should not be much difference in strength between the two sides. Above the army, a huge airship stood in the sky, overlooking the entire battlefield. On the airship, General Thorn, who was responsible for commanding this military training battle, listened to the noise coming from the army, his brows gradually furrowed, and under the solemn silence in the army, their group of undisciplined contractors are particularly conspicuous. What happened to those soldiers? The deputy general on the side looked in the direction indicated by the general. After seeing the scattered group of contractors, he pondered for a few breaths and responded respectfully. General, that group of people should be newly recruited mercenaries. They were sent from the rear of the empire yesterday. I heard from the general in charge of recruitment that they are all very capable people, so we will form a team for now. After listening to the deputy general's explanation, Thorn narrowed his eyes slightly. Oh, I have an impression. Ha! Are they capable? A group of sloppy and timid people are worthy of being said to be capable. The new recruits sent by the empire are becoming more and more perfunctory. Looking at the twisted group of contractors spread out in the center of the army, some of whom were even quietly retreating, Thorn smiled mockingly and looked down with an increasingly cold look. Inform the supervising team to keep an eye on this group of people. If anyone retreats and fails to retreat, behead them. Yes. Deputy General Neuron accepted the order. On the battlefield, the intense murderous intent became more and more stagnant. The armies of both sides continued to gather. The tide of monsters became more and more restless. Sharp and thick hissing sounds were heard endlessly, and the battle was about to break out. How is the army gathering going? General, everything is ready. Okay. Lord General Thorn stood up, and suddenly pulled out the long sword in his hand. A bright silver glow bloomed, and the sword pointed directly at the craziness of monsters below. Bang the drum and attack. Boom. 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 The majestic drum sound sounded until it spread to the entire battlefield. Kill. Immediately afterwards, the deafening shouts of killing shocked the eardrums, the ground began to tremble, the sonorous footsteps gradually overwhelmed all sounds, and the armies of both sides began to charge. From the view of the spaceship, two waves, one black and one white, surged closer to each other, and finally collided with each other on the plain, breaking into a flood of red. The contractors were also carried forward by the army under the charge. Under the battlefield charge, they could only move forward. Anyone who stagnated could only be crushed to pieces by the torrent of steel. Su Yu was naturally among them, but unlike the panic of most of the contractors around him, a trace of flushing began to appear on his face, and a coquettish purple light slowly overflowed in his eyes. The constant shouts of killing and the sound of drums in his ears made his heartbeat begin to boil, and his steps speeded up unconsciously, gradually approaching the charging spearhead. The sticky smell of blood became stronger and stronger, the yellow-brown earth began to turn black and red, and countless huge fireballs fell from the sky, which were stones thrown by the monsters. In the doomsday scene that looked like a meteorite falling from the sky, Su Yu finally charged to the front line. 7 or 8 little goblins with only his waist height opened their sharp teeth and screamed at it with scimitars in hand. He waved his right arm, and Fang Tian's painted halberd that appeared in his hand at some point split the air waves, and a black shadow passed through all the gaps within 3 meters in front of him, splattering a rain of blood all over the sky. The silver figure passed through the wisps of blood mist, and dots of blood condensed on the cheeks, which were then blown away by the howling wind. After shattering 7 or 8 goblins with one blow, Su Yu's charging pace did not stop at all. He had to keep the distance between him and his friends behind him, otherwise the 3-meter-long Fang Tian Huaji would be swung away, and his friends would also be hit. Beat into pieces. Dang! The sound of gold and iron clashing spread from the front. The pole of Fang Tian's painted halberd held a huge mace, and Su Yu's charging steps stopped. What blocked Su Yu's footsteps was the elite unit in the monster tide, the ogre. Different from the short stature of the goblin, this guy was 3 meters tall, with a big body and a round waist. He wore a full-body heavy armor full of spikes and held a thick handle. The iron mace. Looking at Su Yu, who was blocked, its eyes were violent, its big mouth similar to that of the little goblin opened, and it let out a roar. It held the handle of the stick with both arms and kept exerting force. The stronger the warrior, the chewier the flesh and blood. It gets more and more exciting. The force coming from the halberd was getting stronger and stronger. Su Yu had no intention of wrestling with the monster on the opposite side. After he stopped, the surrounding monsters began to surround him. His halberd shaft was tilted slightly, and following the angle of force from above, the mace slid down the halberd shaft. After a muffled sound, a large amount of smoke and dust exploded on the ground, and Su Yu had already jumped away. Covered in smoke and dust, Su Yu twisted his waist to exert force, and swept Fang Tian's painted halberd across the board, causing a scream. The sharp crescent moons on both sides passed over the ogre's knees, and the iron armor was sliced open like butter. Bring out a large bouquet of blood flowers. The ogre let out a miserable howl, and his whole body fell straight down. Just when he fell, a cold light hit his face. The sharp halberd tip pierced through the big mouth, penetrated the brain, and penetrated the iron helmet. This is Fang Tian Huaji, known as the leader of hundreds of soldiers. He is a combination of spear and sword, integrating the characteristics of spears, knives, sticks, hooks and other weapons. It combines the functions of a light weapon and a heavy weapon. The crescent moons on both sides can be hooked and pecked, and the tip of the front end can be stabbed. It is domineering, powerful and exquisite. In the center of the battlefield, the tall ogre was completely supported by Fang Tian's painted halberd, and his head was stuck by the crescents on both sides of the halberd's end, standing like a large tent on the battlefield. Su Yu stood in the shadow formed by the corpse, scanning the enemies gathering from all directions, with a cruel coldness on his lips. When the enemies were almost gathered, he kicked the end of Fang Tian's painted halberd with his right foot. The halberd flew out and the ogre landed with a crash. Su Yu had already held the tail of the halberd and landed lightly on the ogre's tall corpse. Looking down at the densely packed monsters below, purple flames rising in his eyes. Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand was violently swung, and violent air waves roared up. With the ogre as the center, an extremely gorgeous flower of the sea of blood bloomed within a radius of 3 meters, and fragments of broken limbs splashed in the sky. Poor! Ha ha ha, so happy! The strong smell of blood almost filled the air with mist. Su Yuehan's clothes were stained with blood, and blood beads slid down his silver skin. He stood on the tall corpse in the center of the blood pool and spoke in a wild tone. Come! Kill! Countless little goblins formed a demonic tide and began to gather. They rushed forward and one after another towards the blood pool in the center, and turned into blood mist that filled the sky. The pile of corpses was getting higher and higher, and the blood pool was getting wider and wider. In the center of the monster, Su Yu's fanged yen painted halberd just kept swinging and smashing it, and it could not splash any oil in a 3-meter radius. Suddenly, there was a strong tingling sensation above his head, and the beast's instinct gave him a crazy warning. He looked up and saw a huge fireball falling in front of him, and the blazing flames illuminated his cheeks with red glow. Su Yu's pupils shrank suddenly, and then ignited with wild purple flames. He held the tail of the halberd tightly with both hands, and the veins on his arms popped out. He stomped his feet and stepped, twisting his waist and swinging his arms. Swing! Bang! The huge roar almost echoed through half of the battlefield, and the halberd head swept through the meteorites in the air with hunting wind pressure, bursting into countless fire rains and falling down one after another. On the human-side spaceship, Commander Thorn looked at the shocking scene below and laughed. I didn't expect that these losers at the back of the Empire would actually send me a good seedling. Ha 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 ha, he is a fierce general. It's just that he lacks battlefield experience. He can't break out of the battlefield without a mount. Looking at the blood mist that continued to bloom below, Thorn said reproachful words, but the joy between his brows could not be concealed. It's time, Kairos, let the knights charge and bring a good horse to this kid. As you command, General. Chapter 37. On the chaotic battlefield, monsters and soldiers all over the mountains and plains were turned into a mess of bloody porridge, exuding a strong smell of burnt, fishy and sweet, which was the smell of death. There was fighting everywhere, corpses everywhere, and sharp teeth and sharp blades coming from all directions. Smoke billowed from the ground, fueled by clusters of corpses on the ground. Meteors and light balls kept falling in the sky, which were the monsters' trebuchets and the energy cannons on the Imperial spaceships. The smell of rust in the throat has begun to rise, and has even rushed to the brain. The temples are beating all the time, and the eyes of the dark crow scan the surroundings anxiously, full of fear. As a contractor who has escaped from the novice stage, although he has traveled through 3 derivative worlds, this is the first time he has experienced such a cruel cold weapon battlefield. This is the most intuitive way of life. The evil wind hit from ahead, and the sharp blade in his hand swept across, bringing with it a ray of cold light and wiping the throats of the 3 goblins in front of him. The corpse fell to the ground, and Dark Crow's breathing became more and more rapid. This skill just cost him a lot of energy. These little goblins were not too strong, but there were so many that they were almost endless. Although his physical attributes are not weak, he is becoming increasingly unable to do so at this moment. No, if you continue like this, you will definitely die here. He thought about pretending to be dead, but not long ago, a contractor who also chose to pretend to be dead was just in front of him, and a group of goblins scrambled to dig him out of the pile of corpses. In the end, he was torn to pieces and chewed alive in a bloody scene. Let him understand that when faced with such a ferocious monster that feeds on humans, don't even think about pretending to be dead. The most likely possibility is to pretend to be dead. During the melee, a loud noise resounded in front of the battlefield. Dark Crow looked up and saw a bright rain of fire suddenly blooming in the tide of monsters in the distance, and countless rebels falling with flames. In the golden red firelight, a silver figure stood on the pile of corpses. Countless monsters rushed towards the pile of corpses like a wave, but before they could get close, they were torn into pieces by a roaring whirlwind. Meat! In the rising blood mist, the figure on the pile of corpses looked like a demon. The pure and incomparable sense of power made him feel chilled all over as a spectator, and he couldn't help but groan. Is this really a contractor of the same echelon as us? This level? Bang! In a daze, a mace struck directly in front of him and collided with the long knife in his hand. With a muffled sound, the long knife fell from his hand, and Dark Crow was knocked away from the distance. Ahem! Struggling to get up from the pile of soldiers, his chest seemed to be torn open. He covered his lips with his hands, but the bright red blood was still coughed out from between his fingers, mixed with a few pieces of dull flesh. Damn it, the power gap is too big, it's a crushing state. Not caring about the green weapon that had just fallen on the battlefield, he quickly took out the healing potion from the storage space and injected it into his neck. After seeing that only 20% of his health was rising rapidly, his ugly complexion gradually improved. Looking at the monsters that continued to encroach in front of him, the fear in Dark Crow's eyes could no longer be contained. No, we can't continue fighting, otherwise we won't survive. Glancing around, he was surrounded by soldiers who were constantly charging forward. There was no fear in these soldiers' eyes, only strong hatred, and they continued to pounce on the flesh and blood millstone in front of them. Aren't these people afraid of death? In the chaotic fighting, a figure began to retreat quietly. You can't leave the battlefield, but as long as you can hide behind these soldiers who are constantly advancing, you can definitely get through. Sure enough, the most common people on the battlefield are the crazy butchers. The silver figure that had been glimpsed in the tide of monsters suddenly appeared in his mind, and the corner of his mouth curled up with a hint of ridicule. No matter how hard you fight, as long as your physical strength is at its limit, you will eventually be overwhelmed by the tide of thousands of monsters. Only those who use the right method can survive. After retreating to a certain safe distance, the Dark Crow stopped and began to move left and right among the crowd. There must be a team of supervisors at the rear of the battlefield. He still understood this common sense. Glancing at the figures that were still retreating not far to the right, he looked sarcastically. A bunch of idiots. Looking at the contractors who were scared out of their wits by the cruel battlefield and just wanted to escape, Dark Crow felt that he was at least a little more rational than these people. As time went by, the battle situation became more and more tense. When Dark Crow was preparing to retreat for the second time, there was suddenly a faint sound of horse hooves behind him. The gravel beside his feet began to tremble, and the clicking sound in his ears gradually became louder until it was like thunder. The overwhelming power behind him made Dark Crow's scalp numb. He turned around and saw a long sword that magnified sharply in his pupils, and the cold light on the sword's edge picked out people. Pfft! The long sword passed by, a human head rose into the sky, and the smell of blood spread with a loud shout. If you are too timid to fight, you should be killed. The long sword was sheathed loudly, and the silver spear in Kairos's hand pointed straight ahead. The dazzling light bloomed from the armor and merged with the lights that lit up behind him. Glow knights, charge into battle! Kill! In the distance, there is a tide of monsters. The fighting continued, and the pile of corpses even exceeded Su Yu's height, but more and more monsters gathered, mostly goblins and goblins, with a few orcs and ogres mixed in here and there. Various monsters appeared in endlessly, and corpses of various sizes were mixed together. The speed of swinging Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand was obviously slower than before. His breathing began to quicken, and Su Yu, who had been killing monsters for more than 2 hours, gradually felt the soreness on his arms. Call! The chest rose and fell. After taking a deep breath, the rich blood flowed into the heart and lungs. Su Yu flailed his arms and whirled, the halberd swept across a 3-meter radius, and the sea of blood opened again. The roars around him suddenly fell silent, and the surrounding monsters hesitated to step forward. Su Yu stood with his halberd on his halberd, sweeping around, and his vision was filled with darkness. Want to have a party? After a thought flashed through his mind, Su Yu suppressed it again. He was still far away from his limit now, so he was not in a hurry to use the last resort. The explosion of strength was unmatched by the Fang Tian painted halberd in his hand that he had spent great efforts to build. He is invincible in this battlefield, his flesh and blood will be broken under the touch of the halberd. Fang Tian painted halberd, rare. Place of origin, Samsara Paradise, Xinhuo. Quality, green. Category, halberd. Durability, 50/50ths. Attack, 1528. Equipment requirements, Strength 10, Stamina 10. Equipment effect 1, Violence, passive, Strength Judgment +2. If the judgment is successful, it will cause crushing and crushing effects. Equipment effect 2, Overlord, passive, after the number of killed creatures reaches 100, the current strength can be +1 until the killing is completed, up to 5 points. Current strength increase +4. Equipment effect 3, like arms and fingers, passive, the caster's dexterity +2 when using it. Rating, 30. Note, the rating of green equipment ranges from 11 to 30. Green equipment with a rating of 30 will be marked rare and have special attributes attached. Introduction, I am born for war, come together, scum. Price, 5,000 paradise coins. The combination of Bengjin and Fang Tian Huaji completely achieved the effect of 1 + 1 far exceeding 2. Even if he is now surrounded by a tide of monsters, Su Yu is not panicked in this seemingly desperate scene. The corpses he killed along the way piled up like a mountain. It was hard to imagine how big the fire would be after turning on the fire. With this retreat, he could use the halberd in his hand to kill all the way back to the human race in the direction of the fire. Camp. While thinking, the tide of monsters has surged in again, and the roars and screams have become more fervent, but what is different from before is that there are also bursts of thunder-like roars in the air, and they are gradually expanding. Is this the sound of horse hooves? Chapter 38. On the vast plain, the stalemate between two waves of humans and monsters, one white and one black, was shattered by a cavalry force. Under the leadership of Kairos, the knights in armor were wearing aura, and they pierced directly into the tide of monsters, leaving a bloody trail. Behind him, the infantry legion like a swarm of ants followed the cavalry, marching straight and along the bloody road, continuing to widen the large hole torn by the knights, intending to split the entire monster in half. Under the direction of the soldiers, Kairos took the lead and was invincible. Under the iron hooves of the tall war horse, the short goblins were easily trampled into a puddle of flesh like little chickens. Ogres and orcs were as fragile as tissue paper under the charge of spears. Amidst the roar of horses' hooves, the iron cavalry rolled over the battlefield, covered in blood foam and minced meat like a steamroller, and galloped towards the rear of the battlefield, with the goal of drilling through the entire tide of monsters. As for helping Su Yu out of the siege, it was just a matter of convenience. Invasion is like fire and thunder. This was the first impression in Su Yu's mind when he saw the knights rushing towards the battlefield on top of the pile of corpses. In less than a moment after seeing the glow blooming in the distance, the cavalry had rushed forward, clearing a wide blood path on Su Yu's left side. When passing by the pile of corpses, two pairs of eyes shining silver and purple looked at each other, and a hint of appreciation flashed in Kairos's eyes. "Mount your horse and follow the team." A cold voice sounded in Su Yu's ears. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately agreed. Good. The pile of corpses collapsed under his feet. Su Yu jumped up with all his strength and landed firmly on a free warhorse behind the cavalry. The warhorse was fully armored and had a strong body. After Su Yu fell, its galloping pace continued for a moment. When it smelled the strong smell of blood coming from its body, it snorted excitedly. A ball of sparks spurted out from its mouth, and the warhorse neighed and accelerated again. Haha, what a good horse! Su Yu, who was on the horse, was not surprised but overjoyed. He clamped his legs on the horse's belly, held the rein in his right hand, and held his halberd in his left arm, laughing boldly. The warhorse gradually accelerated until it was on par with Kairos and the leader Kairos. Su Yu looked at Kairos aside. Unlike the heavily armored cavalry behind him, he only had a light armor on his body and was not wearing a helmet. His face was resolute, majestic and heroic. "Excuse me, thank you for the rescue." Kairos picked up an orc with his spear and threw it away far away, and responded without looking back. "Knights of Radiance, Kairos." After saying hello, Su Yu did not speak again. The battlefield was not a place for small talk. He suppressed the excitement of the horse beneath him and followed closely behind him. Kairos is the general who leads the team into battle, but he is not qualified to lead the team in front. The cavalry went deeper and deeper into the tide of monsters, and the blood channel behind them was once again filled with rushing monsters. Kairos opened the way, and Su Yu fell behind a little. Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand waved away the air waves, and blocked the attacks from the left and right. The monster was shattered, expanding the gap in front of the cavalry even wider. With the cooperation of the two, the knights sprinted faster and faster. Even though the tide of monsters behind them was mostly orcs, there was still no enemy under the front of the silver spears and halberds. Su Yu no longer knew how long he had been fighting, and he couldn't remember how many people he had killed. Anyway, the power of Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand had already increased to the extreme. A steady stream of power came from the halberd in his hand, making him swing more powerfully. Seeing a thick blade coming in front of him, Su Yu kept his speed, but turned slightly sideways, held up his halberd, and charged against the orc cavalry on the opposite side. The thick blade cut across his chest, bringing out a large amount of sparks, but that was all. After swallowing a large amount of adamantium alloy, Su Yu's tempered defense could almost ignore all sharp weapons below blue. Under the confrontation, Su Yu only left a scratch, but the orc cavalry on the opposite side was penetrated directly by Fang Tian's painted halberd, and the entire corpse hung high on the halberd. Su Yu's tiger's mouth shook, and the body on the head of the halberd suddenly split into several pieces and collapsed. Then the halberd trembled slightly, shaking off the remaining blood foam on the halberd, and returned to being smooth and slender. The speed of his charge was even faster than before. There was no pause in the process. After entering the end of the wave, the pressure in front of them increased. The monsters they faced changed from small goblins and other miscellaneous fish to the solid ogre army, and finally turned into the orc cavalry that were now confronting their cavalry. These orc cavalry are wearing heavy black armor and holding large and thick axes. The mounts on their crotches are large wolf beasts. Their strength should not be underestimated. If it weren't for the ultimate defense brought by hardening, Su Yu would not have known how many wounds would have been added to his body. But even so, his newly strengthened jacket has now been gloriously retired and turned into a pile of rags, which he tore open casually. Now the tip of the charge has changed from Kairos alone to Su Yu and Kairos running side by side, each responsible for one side. With the whistling and roaring in his ears, Su Yu used Fang Tian's painted halberd non-stop, chopping, stabbing, hooking, slicing, probing, hanging, and knocking. He used all kinds of skills at his fingertips to fight his way through the crowd of monsters. The orc cavalry in front became more and more dense, like a thick wall of flesh, but behind the wall of flesh, the outline of the earth could be vaguely seen, and the broken formation was just ahead. Kairos on the left suddenly shouted loudly, the sound was like thunder. Breaking the military. Under the fierce shout, dense radiance gathered from the knights behind and gathered on Kairos's spear, exuding overwhelming pressure. Kairos's horse leaped forward, his figure went straight across Su Yu, and rushed towards the wall of flesh. The figure on top stood proudly, pressing back with the spear in his hand, blooming with thousands of rays of light. The hunting wind pressure collapsed, and the spear in Kairos' hand shot out. Boom! Violent vibrations accompanied a huge beam of light flying out. Under the beam, the flesh wall turned into powder. The knights jumped in, and there was no obstacle in front of them. Break the army and dig out the formation, and you will be invincible. Su! The knights reined in their horses and stopped. They were already on a yellow-green plain, with a black tide of monsters behind them. In the tide, a huge passage was particularly conspicuous. Turn around and line up. Get ready for the second round of charging. Kairos's order echoed in the plains, and the knights who had just carved out a wave and many of their cavalry had sacrificed had no words. They just silently drove their horses to line up behind them. Even though many of the cavalry's heavy armors were now broken, there was still cold determination in their eyes. Su Yu raised his eyes and saw that the glow on each of the cavalrymen began to dim, especially Kairos. The glow on his body had only a thin layer covering it. It seems that the move just now took a lot of energy from him. But even if the glow is dim, the momentum of the entire night order becomes more and more cold and majestic. Su Yu drove his horse closer to Kairos and said, "How about I take the lead in this charge?" Kairos looked at Su Yu's silver skin, his eyes flickered, but he returned to calm in an instant. His tone was still cold, but his figure moved slightly to the left. "Return to the team, I will help you." Su Yu was stunned for a moment, looking at Kairos's always calm eyes. He felt enlightened, raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and drove his horse forward. "Okay, you can help me." Chapter 39. On the holy airship, after seeing the feet of the knights below completely piercing the monster tide, General Thorn couldn't help but show excitement, and slapped his broad palm heavily on the guardrail on one side. The white solid wood, which was even stronger than steel, began to spread along the entire guardrail under Thorn's blow. The spaceship engineer on the side twitched his eyes, looking at the back of the commander and hesitating to speak. "This thing is very expensive, and most of it is distributed in the elf forest. After the war with the elves, the Empire's savings have become somewhat dwarfed." Not paying attention to the engineer whose complexion turned dark behind him, Thorn stared at the battle below with his eyes wide open. "Haha, Kairos is becoming more and more reliable. Maybe this time we can take down this wave of demons in one fell swoop. These bullshit demon bastards have become more and more active in the past few years." Looking down from the battleship, the black demonic tide on the plain is like a torn rag, and the white human legion is like a huge pointed cone, which is fiercely inserted into the black cloth, and is continuously expanding. With this torn gap wide. At the rear of the battle, behind the demonic tide, a familiar glow lit up again from the distance, and its speed became faster and faster, heading straight towards the black cloth. Among the cavalry ranks, as the charge speed of the knights increased from slow to fast, the aura on their bodies gradually became brighter from dim, and even Su Yu's body surface was coated with a thin layer of aura. You gain the buff effect of the Glow Knight's fearless charge. When maintaining the charge state, fighting spirit plus 20%, movement speed plus 20%, and physical recovery plus 30%. Under the glow, the heat in Su Yu's heart became more intense, and his aching arms became stronger again. The demonic tide came closer and closer until the two sides collided brazenly. Amidst the roar of horse hooves, Su Yu and Kairos, who were at the tip of the cavalry's spears, splashed blood and rain in their hands, and the entire cavalry once again entered the demonic tide. A silver spear or a long halberd can easily defeat 1,000 armies, but 10,000 men cannot resist them. Unlike the previous difficulties of drilling the formation on the front, the efficiency of drilling the formation on the back can be said to be that the deeper you go, the easier it becomes. On the dense battlefield, the cavalry regiment rushing from behind gave the enemy no time to react. Before they could even turn around, they were trampled to pieces by iron hoofs. Amid the dying wails of the monsters, the Knights of Radiance galloped through the demonic tide like chopping melons and vegetables, with bones turning into mud and rivers of blood flowing along the way. Su Yu smashed the heads of the two orc infantrymen in front with a halberd, and then used the halberd pole to swing away the huge mace coming from the right. He poked the tail of the halberd back, and the tip of the tail penetrated straight through the throat of the ogre behind, whose center of gravity was unstable. The warhorse galloped endlessly under his crotch, and the halberd tail was brought out, splashing a bright flower of blood. As the battle progressed, the situation became more relaxed, but the expressions of Su Yu and Kairos became more serious. The killings under the halberd continued. Su Yu turned his eyes slightly and looked at Kairos on the left. Something's wrong. The spear in Kairos's hand was tied together, and little cold stars danced out. The corpses fell limply, and were then swept away by the cavalry behind them. I know, it's been such an easy ride. After listening to Kairos's response, Su Yu continued. There must be an ambush ahead, do you want to take a detour? No, the momentum of the charge cannot be broken. Under the glow, we will move forward indomitably. Kairos said the last 8 words decisively. After a moment of pause, he continued. If there is really an ambush ahead, I will take the lead. If you save your strength, you will definitely dig into the formation for 3 rounds. Su Yu did not respond immediately, and asked a question that seemed to have nothing to do with the battle situation. War horses are afraid of fire. Kairos paused, then calmly glanced at Su Yu's purple eyes and responded. Don't be afraid. After fighting the magician in Lotus Swamp, the knight's horses have been carefully trained. Okay, you take the lead, I'll save my strength. After receiving a positive reply, Su Yu agreed to Kairos's arrangement, gently tugged on the horse's reins, and was half a body behind Kairos. Time passed very quickly during the charge, and the cavalry continued to charge. In less than a moment, they had reached the center of the demonic tide. At this point, the monsters in front of the cavalry became strangely empty. After a moment of silence, the roar of wolf beasts sounded from the front, and a large group of orc cavalry suddenly appeared in front, pouring towards the cavalry. The two cavalry teams exchanged hands quickly. Kairos' expression remained unchanged, but he clenched the spear tighter. Su Yu could even see clearly the grey hair floating on the opposite wolf beast, and the purple meaning in his eyes became even more intense. Under the glow, Kairos' fierce shout was deafening, and the cavalry behind him followed closely. Keep moving forward. The sound shook the sky, and the shouts shook the clouds. Under the fierce shout, the glow turned into a rainbow, and the entire night seemed to melt into a light arrow, with Kairos as the tip of the arrow, and shot straight into the opposite orc cavalry. In just an instant, the orc cavalry was penetrated by light arrows, flesh and blood flew down, and the colliding cavalry collapsed. But after passing through the encirclement of the orc cavalry, what greeted the knights was not a smooth road, but a high wall. I saw an iron wall made of huge stacked tower shields standing in front of the knights. The iron wall was about 4 meters high, like an iron wall in a copper mountain. Countless steel spears protruded from the gaps between the overlapping tower shields. The sharp cold light makes people shudder. Seeing this situation, Kairos' eyes did not waver at all, and the knight's charging speed did not stop at all, charging towards the iron wall with a mountain-shattering momentum. When it was about to approach, the rainbow light surrounding the cavalry quickly shrank and focused on Kairos' spear. He leaped forward on horseback, raising his spear. Breaking the military. A bright beam of light shot out, a violent roar accompanied by vibrations. The iron wall immediately disintegrated into countless steel fragments, flying in all directions, and the knights broke through again. After breaking through the iron wall, the glow on the entire knights was already indiscernible. Kairos pulled out the spear on the ground while galloping, and his pupils shrank sharply when he looked ahead. I saw an identical iron wall standing in front of me. Looking down from the air, I could clearly see that there were 3 identical iron walls in front of the knights. Not far behind the iron wall was the front line for the handover with the human camp. After his pupils trembled, Kairos regained his composure. The glow was gone. He still had an armored spear and a body of flesh and blood. It was no big deal. Even if the glow is exhausted, even if there is an iron wall and sharp spears in front of them, the entire cavalry still does not waver at all, and just moves forward indifferently. Suddenly, a majestic purple flame leaped up in front of the cavalry, and the fire dyed the entire knight's purple. Su Yu's body was wrapped with boiling purple flames, and the horse under his crotch crossed Kairos and walked in front of the cavalry. Head. Now, it's my turn to take the lead. Facing Kairos' surprised gaze, Su Yu smiled openly. Food fire, start. As soon as the words fell, countless boiling purple fires rose into the sky in the demonic tide. Throughout the battle, Su Yu could not remember how many monsters he had killed, and the countless corpses were turned into the best fuel. In just a few breaths, nearly half of the entire demonic sky was covered by the noisy purple fire, and purple covered the sky and the earth. Especially at the pile of corpses where Su Yu had been fighting for more than 2 hours, the fire had formed a pillar of fire reaching the sky. The battlefield began to boil, and everyone's eyes began to focus on the purple flames roaring and boiling in the sky. The monsters began to run away in fear, and the battlefield suddenly became a mess. The remaining contractors in the human camp looked to the sky in horror. On the sacred airship, the main gun of the airship, which was getting ready to fire and aimed at the iron wall below, was quickly stopped by the engineer. Thorn's big hands held the crumbled airship guardrail, and his eyes were fixed on Su Yu, who was leading the team below and taking the lead. He clearly saw that the purple fire first ignited on the boy's body, then rose from the tide of monsters, and finally formed this exaggerated fire field covering half of the battlefield. How is this possible? The fire dance level elemental mage in Lotus Swamp can't even do this. This kid. No, it's not magic. Thorn's words were interrupted by a voice from behind. The leader of the chaplain group wearing a priest's robe walked out from behind, looking down at the purple sea of fire below, with lightning flashing in his eyes. There is no evil smell of magic. This thing is not magic. Chapter 40. This thing doesn't even look like fire. After continuing to observe the fire below for a moment, the priest spoke again. Not like flames. Hubert, are you sure you read it correctly? What else can this thing be if it's not a flame? Thorn pointed to the sea of fire below and looked at the priest standing with his hands behind his back, still a little excited. Have you felt the hot temperature? Hubert said calmly. This doesn't seem to be true, but it looks very powerful. After Thorn got stuck for a moment, he came back. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly laughed twice and confirmed to Hubert. Are you sure this kid isn't using magic? He has nothing to do with Karachu and those girls, right? It's not magic. I won't admit it, but I'm not sure whether he has anything to do with the magicians in Lotus Swamp. Hehe, it's not good, then you guys in the sleeping temple won't trouble him for no reason, right? Hubert glanced at Thorn, who was staring down and laughing, and understood what he was thinking. Thorn has been guarding the Black Mountain Fortress for more than 10 years. Such battles will break out every once in a while. Although he can repel the Black Dragon monster every time, the soldiers in his hands are also constantly being consumed. Nowadays, the monster group is getting more and more restless, but the number of new soldiers sent to the rear of the Empire is less than 1 year. He urgently needs more strong soldiers. Don't worry, as long as he has nothing to do with magic, our sleeping temple will naturally not cause trouble for him. However, I am personally quite interested in him. He is not a priest or a mage. He doesn't seem to have much to do with a shaman, but he has this kind of fire-like power. This is quite rare. Maybe. Great job. While thinking, Hubert's muttering was interrupted by Thorn's loud shout. He frowned slightly, glanced dissatisfied at Thorn who was yelling, and followed his gaze to the battlefield below. Look! On the battlefield, the sea of fire that covered the sky gradually gathered into a huge fire dragon under Su Yu's control, flying towards the direction of the knight's charge. After his intelligence improved, he became more and more proficient in controlling the fire. Although he was unable to operate such a huge fire in detail, it was not a big problem just to control the sea of fire to gather and then rush forward. The cost was that his personal panel would swipe and fall. Of mana. The huge fire dragon charged with an overwhelming momentum. All the monsters along the road began to abandon their armor and flee in both directions. The monsters facing the fire dragon had given up resistance and just looked desperately at the direction in which the fire dragon was coming. After the monstrous fiery dragon appeared, the entire battlefield became quiet. Both humans and monsters turned their attention to the direction of the flying dragon. This was a blow that could change the situation on the battlefield. Under the eager eyes of all humans on the battlefield and the fearful sight of all monsters, the fire dragon silently passed over all the monsters in front, forming a purple river of fire about 100 feet wide, wrapping the 3 iron walls together. After several breaths, the river of fire broke out and turned into a stream of light floating upward, gradually disappearing without a trace. There was no wind pressure, no heat, and even no harm during the whole process. Thorn's expression on the spaceship slowly changed from excitement to dullness. He stared blankly at the massive river of fire below that dispersed, leaving behind a pile of intact monsters, which perfectly demonstrated what a face is. Confused. But he was not the only one who was stunned. The human army and the radiant knights at both ends of the river of fire all looked at the unharmed group of monsters in front of them, and they didn't know how to react for a moment. Kairos behind him poked Suyu with the butt of his gun and spoke hesitantly. This fire is powerful. Such a huge contrast in front of him made even his extremely calm temperament feel a little unbearable. Suyu didn't show any embarrassment and just responded calmly. It's already working. Prepare to charge again. As soon as he finished speaking, a strong wind suddenly blew up from the sky. The violent hurricane swept over and the group of monsters became agitated again. Those monsters that were roaring for their own lives after the river of fire dispersed were suddenly stunned. They found that black powder was constantly falling from their bodies. The weapons they held, the heavy armor they wore, and the tower shields they held high, as long as they were metal products, were all turned into burnt powder and scattered by the hurricane. After caressing the area covered by the previous fire river, the colorless hurricane gradually turned into a black wind dragon about 100 feet wide. Under everyone's shocked eyes, the wind dragon shot up into the sky with black burnt powder as large as the sand in the Ganges River, and then gradually disappeared out of sight. Only a large area of naked monsters, defenseless and without all their equipment, were left standing there. Although it seemed to be caused by the hurricane, everyone understood that the main reason was still the huge fire dragon that suddenly appeared before. Sure enough, it's not that simple. Flames that only react to metal substances are interesting. On the airship, Hubert took back the staff in his hand and looked at Suyu below, who had begun to lead the knights to beat up the drowned dog. The interest in his eyes became more and more intense. What are you still doing? I'll kill all these devil bastards. Exaggerated war cries came from the airship, and Thorn's huge voice even covered the entire battlefield. After a moment of stasis, the battlefield resumed killing, and the shouts of killing soared into the sky. Facing the unarmed monsters in front of them, the strong and tenacious human army was simply a one-sided massacre. The Glow Knights led by Suyu started their charge again before the hurricane subsided. After losing the obstruction of the tower shield and iron wall, these monsters were unable to stop the cavalry's charge, and a wide blood channel appeared in the demonic tide. After experiencing 2 waves of stimulus from the fire dragon and the hurricane, the morale of the entire demonic tide was directly shattered, and the formation was torn in half. A large number of monsters that had lost their equipment were easily slaughtered, and the gap in combat power between the enemy and us gradually enlarged. In the next 3 hours, the human legions surrounded and strangled the monster tide, encroaching step by step. And Suyu has led the knights to charge into the demonic tide for 2 rounds, tearing the entire demonic tide to pieces and providing excellent encirclement and suppression conditions for the infantry regiment at the rear. Every time the purple fire is ignited on the battlefield, the surrounding monsters are frightened and run away in all directions. Although the fire cannot burn anyone, it can destroy all the equipment on the body. After losing their weapons and armor, they are like lambs waiting to be slaughtered when facing the iron hooves of the cavalry and the swords of the infantry. The skylight gradually sank under the wash of killing and gunpowder smoke. The entire battle lasted from noon to sunset before it finally ended. The human camp won a complete victory and almost wiped out all the monsters on the plain. Only a few monsters fled back to Black Mountain in embarrassment after being chased hundreds of miles by the airship. That was the monster's lair, and the dark valley in the center was where the black dragon slept. Ha 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 ha! What a great victory! Beat the drum and return to the fortress. Thorn's excited voice spread throughout the spaceship, and the guardrail snapped as he slapped it. The engineer behind him looked sad and angry. Hubert has returned to the spaceship and is summoning all the priests to prepare the materials needed to perform a large-scale healing spell when he returns to the fortress later.